The series starts with Thomas Shelby riding his horse through Birmingham. He meets a Chinese man and his daughter, and we find out that the daughter is a witch. Thomas asks her to cast a spell on his horse to help it win the race. The race is on, and lots of people are watching Thomas. It's clear Thomas is doing this on purpose in front of everyone so people will bet on his horse. After that, Thomas walks away and goes to meet his brother Arthur Shelby. Arthur is really upset about what Thomas did. He went to the witch, and they say if Thomas's horse actually wins, it's going to cause big problems for the whole family because he didn't get permission from Billy Campbell to organize the race. From their conversation, we also learn that Billy Campbell is the official person in charge of organizing any horse races. Arthur tells Thomas that Billy Campbell has a huge army of men and lots of weapons, which is why Thomas can't go against orders, but he tells him he's the one managing the work, and that's what the whole family agreed on after coming back from the war. He lets him walk away. On the other side, we see Freddie's son and find out he's working at the coal factory in town. Freddie and Thomas don't have the best relationship because Freddie tries to keep his distance. Everyone knows he's a communist, and that could cause big problems for Thomas, his family, and his job. So, it's better to stay away. Later, Freddie goes to see Thomas at the bar, and we also learn that Freddie was with him during the war. Freddie says he heard from a friend who works at the post office. They got a message from the minister, Winston Churchill, saying that some army stuff, like weapons and other things, had been stolen in the city. They put out a list of suspicious people, and of course, my name and yours were on it. But Thomas didn't pay much attention and just walked away. Later, Thomas goes to meet Aunt Polly at the church. She tells him she heard a very high-ranking officer is coming to town but doesn't know why. She asks if Thomas knows anything, and he tells her the officer is coming because some state weapons were stolen. He admits he was the one who did it, but by mistake, not on purpose, because shortly after, some of his gang members, they were trying to steal some car tires from the port but accidentally ended up stealing weapons instead. They were shocked when they realized what they'd taken. Aunt Polly got mad at him and asked if he'd gotten rid of the weapons yet. But Thomas told her he hadn't gotten rid of anything yet. He was just trying to reassure her. He said that in exactly 3 days, he'd have all those weapons in a spot near the police so they could find them and end the whole thing. Then he left. After that, we see Shelby meeting Freddie's son, and we find out they're in love and secretly together because none of her brothers would approve of her marrying Freddie. And of course, we already know why. Especially Thomas, because he's a communist and being connected to a family like that makes the police focus on them even more. Then we move on to a woman named Grace, who's going to meet the pub owner, Harrison, whose name is Harry. She tells him she's there about the waitress job she saw in the news, but Harry says she's way too pretty and it wouldn't work for her to work in the pub since all the customers are gang guys. Grace insists she knows her stuff and has worked in tough places before. She starts singing for him and tidying up a bit, and he really likes her voice and energy. He's serious about the job and actually decides to appoint her. Meanwhile, Inspector Campbell arrives. He's the one in charge of the stolen weapons case. He meets with the city police chiefs and tells them he's here to root out the corruption going on in the city, and from now on it's going to be real work. Later, we see Arthur sitting in the cinema, but he doesn't get to stay long because some cops show up, arrest him, and start torturing him. After that, they take him to meet Inspector Campbell. They think Arthur is the leader of the Peaky Blinders gang, but actually, Thomas is the leader since he's the eldest brother, so they got it wrong. The gang leader gets approached by Officer Campbell, who asks him about the stolen goods. He tells him he doesn't know anything about the weapons or any theft, but Campbell doesn't buy it. Still, he lets him go and says, "Before you leave, to prove you're not involved, I want to find the stolen stuff. If I don't, then you and your family are the only ones left for me to lock up." Then Arthur walks away, and Campbell lets him go. At the same time, Arthur heads to Thomas to buy a drink at the bar, and he's surprised to see Grace there because he thinks she's really beautiful. He tells her, "If you're not some kind of prostitute like you say, you need to get out of here right now," and then he takes her with him. The bottle of the drink is taken, and he goes to give it to the officer, who is completely broken and tells him, "Officer Campbell, stay here because some stuff was stolen from the state." He asks for our help or else he'll lock us up. But Thomas doesn't care about what he says and, as usual, just leaves. After that, Thomas goes to his men and tells them he's changed the plan and won't be dumping the weapons anywhere near the police like they agreed. Then he leaves them and walks away. The next day, we see Inspector Campbell heading to a museum to look around for a bit. But the surprise is that Grace, the girl who got hired at the bar, comes up and talks to him. We find out that Grace is undercover. Campbell calls to catch up on the Peaky Blinders and the communists in general, just to be in the loop and get their news first. Grace says she feels like Thomas is the real boss, not Arthur like they thought. She also suspects that the Irish army, not the gang, stole the weapons. But Campbell tells her to keep doing her job and keep him updated on the gang as usual, then he lets them go. At the same time, Arthur is furious and goes to see Thomas. As soon as they meet, Arthur tells him their horse won the race, meaning they've officially started a war with Billy Campbell. But Thomas says he planned all of it. So basically, he tells him that since the horse won this time, next time people will bet on the horse again and it'll win too. But the time after that, even more people will bet on it, but the horse will lose, and that's when we'll win all their money. The next day, we see Thomas and his brothers going to meet a guy who works with another gang called the Lee Gang. We find out there have been a lot of problems between the two families, and this time things get worse. They start fighting, and Thomas and his brothers get beaten up by the Lees. So now the real problems between them have officially started. At the same time, the inspector, Wary Campbell, and the police launch a raid. All the houses in the city started searching for weapons. Then Thomas and his brothers arrive and are shocked by what the police have done, though of course the police had left early because they had already trashed the whole city and broken most of the bars. So, they all gather at Aunt Polly's place, who tells them that the police have made people think that we agreed to what happened. And obviously, something like that could cause them huge problems because almost everyone in the city pays a lot of money to the Peaky Blinders for protection. So how could they have agreed to smashing everyone's businesses like that? Aunt Polly then tells Thomas that Barry found out you're the leader of the Peaky Blinders and wants. He meets her, but Thomas tells her he won't meet him unless he's in a stronger position. Then he leaves and walks away like usual. After that, Thomas goes out into the city and tells everyone to gather pictures of the king. Then he sets the pictures on fire and calls his journalist friend to come and film what's going on. The journalist shows up and records everything happening. At the same time, Perry Campbell gets a call from the minister, who keeps scolding him, saying people burned the king's pictures because of how he treated them. The minister tells him he needs to get control of the situation. Campbell agrees and asks who filed the report in the first place. The minister says it was a guy named Thomas Shelby. And then he locks it from the other side. Next, we see Ada Shelby talking about Aunt Polly, telling her she's 2 months pregnant. But when Aunt Polly asks about the baby's father, Ada refuses to say. Around that time, something strange happens. A guy from the gang comes to see Thomas, gives him a bullet with his name on it, and warns him that the ones who sent it are the Lee family, meaning they're planning to kill him. But as usual, Thomas doesn't care about the warning, takes the bullet, and keeps going. A little later, Grace meets Thomas on his way and tells him she wants the wealth. The horse came back to the stable because it was banned from racing before, but Thomas didn't give her a clear answer. He just said he'd give her money to buy a nice dress to wear to the next race with him, then he let her go. After that, Thomas went and met Aunt Polly, who told him, "What, you're going to be a dad?" Thomas got really angry, left her, and went to the cinema. By the way, Ada was there too. He met Ada and asked her who the baby's father was. She said it was Fredrickson. Thomas got super mad and left her. Then he went back to Aunt Polly, who told him the horse lost the race, but they made a lot of money. The problem is, they ended up getting into more and more trouble with Perry Kimball. Thomas tells her he knows what he's doing, But Polly gets really mad at him and tells him he doesn't know anything, asking him not to get involved in the matter because she'll handle it calmly. But he tells her that if she doesn't know how to handle it, she should tell him and he'll take care of it his way. She leaves him with her Uncle Polly, still angry and without saying a word. Later, Thomas goes to meet Inspector Campbell and tells him he's here to make a deal, saying all he really cares about is making sure the work runs smoothly. Campbell then asks him about the deal he came to make with him. So Thomas tells him not to attack the city again and also says he wants to work on organizing races legally so no one gets hurt. He says he'll expand his business with Billy Campbell, and in return, Thomas will hand over the weapons and warn him that if he gets caught, the people holding the guns will send them to the Irish army, which might get the minister completely removed from his position. The inspector has no choice but to agree to all his demands. After that, Thomas goes to the pub and meets his brothers, but suddenly and without warning, something really strange happens. Billy Campbell shows up with his men, carrying weapons, and Billy yells that he wants. Thomas Shelby and Billy, just so you know, are brothers to Perry, but they have different jobs, not the same one. So Thomas gathers his Shelby brothers and kicks everyone out of the pub. He gets really angry and tells them they're scammers because they held a race without his knowledge, and he's the one in charge of managing the races in the city. He threatens to kill them all. Then Thomas pulls a gun out of his pocket, throws it at Perry Campbell and says, "We're both enemies from the same family." He makes a new deal with him and says, "I know they're stealing betting money from the races, and it's my job to stop that theft. In return, we'll work together." So Campbell changes his mind and decides not to kill them. They actually work together, and he tells Thomas that they'll meet again to make a deal. Thomas agrees. They leave Campbell and his men behind and walk away. Of course, his siblings greet him then and say they finally understand why he did all that. He was determined to carry out the race and even had fights with the family. They say he never does anything without thinking hard about how to get the best out of it. Meanwhile, we see Fredrickson trying to hide, and he meets Ada Shelby. We find out he proposed to Ada Shelby, and they're supposed to meet up to leave the city together like. Thomas promised Inspector Campbell, and Inspector Campbell wanted to leave because Freddie was supposedly a communist, and back then, communism was a big deal to them. It was serious, and they could easily lock him up. When Thomas found out what happened, he got really upset and decided to go to Freddie. But Aunt Polly threatened him, saying she'd try one more time with Freddie to get him out of town. So Aunt Polly went to Freddie, who had a lot of money, gave it to him, and told him this was his last chance to get out of town because Thomas wouldn't let any communists stay in the family. It would mess up their whole operation. She told him she came for this reason. With the money, they got 2 tickets to America so he and his son could travel. They tried to pressure him into agreeing, but he said he'd think about it later. Then Thomas went to meet Aris at the church, and Arthur was really upset. He told Thomas, "I feel like I don't matter because I don't know what's going on in the family. You guys make all the decisions without even checking with me." Later, he found out about the guns by pure chance, just like anyone else. He also found out about Ia's marriage to Freddie by accident. Thomas tried to calm him down, and they found out everything about the gun situation. To make up with Thomas, Ack took him and bought him Harry's guitar. Arthur had wanted to have a house for a really long time, ever since they came back from the war. Later, Thomas left Arthur to meet Freddie. Freddie showed up, threw the tickets and money at Thomas, pulled out a gun and threatened him. But Thomas hit him, grabbed the gun and said, "You did all this and laughed about it just because you want to be part of the Peaky Blinders gang, thinking that'll keep you safe." Freddie got mad and said, "I don't care about anyone but her. I really love her." Thomas told him, "Well, if you've decided to stay in town, then this marriage isn't going to last." Then he left. After that, Thomas went to Polly and told her. He told her, "You're out of the deal now," and said he'd handle Freddie his own way. Then he left without waiting for any reply. The next day was race day. Thomas took the car and went to Grice to pick him up for the race and the party that Perry Campbell had thrown, just like before. At the same time, Arthur, John, and the rest of the gang showed up and caught Lay's gang stealing his betting money. They kept beating them up. After that, Arthur took all the money they stole from Lay's gang and gave it to Thomas, who went and laid it all out in front of Perry Campbell on his table and said, "We did our part like. We promised you, and we managed to get back all the stolen money. And if you let us protect you, we'll save you a lot more cash, and you'll end up paying us way less than what's being stolen from you." So Brim Campbell immediately agrees to Thomas's offer. After that, Thomas leaves with a Gress, and the next day, something totally unexpected happens. Because the Shelby family isn't around, his kids take advantage and go steal all their money. When Thomas and his brothers come back and find out what happened, they get really angry. Thomas goes to meet the leader of his kids' gang, and as soon as he meets her, Thomas pulls out a bullet from his pocket with Campbell written on it and hands it to her, making it clear that he won't betray Inspector Campbell. She was surprised, but Thomas finished speaking and told her that he would betray Campbell and challenge her men to join his side and help him. She said, "If you trust me, then you're basically saying you'll betray your ally." Thomas replied that she wasn't his ally and that he'd wanted to team up with them for a long time since they're family. "We know his leader is family too, actually, just on the mom's side. To convince her more," he said, "pick any girl from your clan and I'll marry her to my brother John." She agreed right away because if they married, it would mean the end of the feud between the two families forever. That same night, Thomas met with Inspector Campbell and gave him the name of the biggest communist in town, Stanley Champion. He told him, "Here's his address, go arrest him, and in return, forget about that Freddie son guy completely." But Bell wasn't convinced. Thomas kept telling him that Stanley was a way bigger and more important communist than Freddie, who, by the way, Campbell wanted to arrest because he was a communist. He also told him that this would get you a lot more, and the arrest would be super easy once you knew the address. After thinking it over, Campbell agreed, took the address from Thomas, and the next day Inspector Campbell went to that address and really managed to arrest Stanley. After that, Billy Campbell showed up and gave Thomas a legal permit to organize races, just so things wouldn't get messy. "I'm not really anything special, just an expert, nothing more." Thomas gets super happy and goes to celebrate with all his crew at the pub because, for the first time, they can actually organize races without the government bothering them. Later, Thomas takes Grace and they go to the church, where he tells her he wants her to work with him and be his secretary. He says his business is legit now, so there's nothing to worry about. Of course, it's clear Thomas and Grace really like each other, so Grace stops right there because she likes him and wants to be closer to him to stay updated on things for her job. After that, Thomas gathers his siblings and family. It's all just so they can go through with the marriage with Lee's family like they agreed. John gets really happy the moment he sees the bride and he likes her a lot, even though he was against it at first. Then they have the wedding and keep celebrating the marriage. Plus, the two families become allies with no problems between them at all. In the middle of the wedding, Aisha goes into labor, so they stop the party, take her home to give birth there. Thomas decides to send for Freddie so he can be there for the birth and see his son. Freddie comes and is really happy about the baby, but the good moment doesn't last because the police show up, arrest Freddie, and Aisha gets really upset about it. Aunt Polly goes to Thomas and gets really upset because she thinks he's the one who told the police about Freddie. Thomas is confused since he never told anyone. We find out that Grace was the one who informed the police when she found out Freddie had shown up. Thomas is totally mixed up and doesn't understand what's going on. Later, Grace is sitting down working on the accounts with a disk, and she's shocked to see money being sent every month to someone. Everyone else thinks this person is dead, and Grace even attended his funeral. She tries to trick Arthur into talking, and he tells her they faked his death. Grace asks who was buried at the funeral then, and Arthur says it wasn't him. He invites her, then leaves, and Grace keeps thinking about it. She decides to go see the grave herself. When she gets there, she connects the dots and realizes the weapons are buried in the same spot. After that, Grace goes to Campbell and tells him everything she found out. As soon as he hears, he heads straight there with his police team. They search the grave and pull out the weapons. At that moment, Inspector Campbell is really happy. He takes a ring out of his pocket and offers it to Grace, saying he loves her. But she gently turns him down, telling him he deserves someone better. Campbell gets really upset and says, "You're leaving me for Tom Shelby." She doesn't answer. Grace answers his question, saying that the mission is over and she'll hand in her resignation the next day. After that, Inspector Campbell and his police officers come to arrest Thomas, but Grace manages to help Thomas escape before Campbell arrives. When Campbell and his men enter the house, they find no one there. The inspector then decides to cancel the whole operation and thanks his lucky stars that they finally found the weapon. The next day, Thomas goes and hands over papers labeled Shelby Limited Company, with the names of the three brothers, Thomas, Arthur, and John, listed under the management section. He tells Thomas that the company belongs to the three of them equally. Arthur is super happy and, as usual, thanks Thomas. She's upset with all of them, especially Thomas, because she thinks he's the one who handed Freddie over to the police. But Polly tells her it wasn't Thomas, and to prove it, she says Thomas is going to break Freddie out of jail since Inspector Campbell didn't keep his promise to him. She's really, really happy to hear this. Later, Thomas gathers the whole gang and tells them he's going to get rid of Billy Campbell today and take his place. He also says he's going to break Freddie out, which makes her super happy. She even says she'll name her son Carl after the famous communist Karl Marx. Weird, but anyway, that's not important now. Next, we cut to Freddie in the prisoner transport van. Because he's about to be sent to prison, and there's an officer next to him undoing his handcuffs, telling him that the Peaky Blinders gang sent their regards and found out someone's planning to attack the gang to help him escape. Freddie gets really happy about that. Then Danny, one of the gang members, blocks the police car, opens fire on them, and Freddie makes his getaway. After that, we see Thomas telling Grace that he loves her and wants to spend the rest of his life with her. But before he can hear her answer, one of the gang shows up with Arthur and tells him that Billy Kimber found out he's going to betray him and has sent men with guns to take him out. So Thomas calls a meeting. He's with the gang, telling them who it might be. Of course, it has to be someone from the gang because no one else would know. Then Polly tells Uncle Polly that Grace also knew, and we understand that this was the last thing Grace said to Inspector Campbell before she resigned. And Inspector Campbell was the one who tipped off Billy Campbell. "Didn't I tell you they're siblings?" Thomas gets really shocked, and Polly tells him she's going to the pub to find out for herself if Grace did it or not. She goes to Uncle Polly to see Grace, and as soon as she says she suspects her, Grace pulls out a gun and points it at her. But Polly isn't scared at all. She just sits there calmly. She forgot she's from the Thomas Shelby family or what. So Chris comes and confesses everything to her, and Polly can tell from what she says that she really loves Thomas. So Polly decides not to kill her, but she tells her she won't accept her in the family and it's better for her to leave, because if Thomas finds out about her betrayal, he'll kill her in a brutal way. And if Thomas doesn't kill her, Polly will do it herself if she stays in the city. At the same time, Thomas and his men are getting their weapons ready to prepare for Billy Campbell. John tells him the police have pulled out of the whole city, and John realizes that Inspector Campbell betrayed him and handed Billy Campbell over. Meanwhile, Inspector Campbell is the police chief in town is keeping out of what's about to happen because he wants to get rid of Thomas and his gang through Billy Campbell. Billy and his men actually show up, and on the other side, Thomas and his men are joined by Freddie. Just before they start fighting, Eddie's wife comes in and tries to appeal to them, saying a lot of people from both sides are going to die and it's pointless. But Billy pulls out his gun and shoots at Thomas. Thomas isn't badly hurt though. He gets up, kills Billy Campbell, and tells the rest of the men that the problem was between him and Billy only, and he's not going to get involved with them. He tells them to go home. In Bamman, people actually listen to what he says and leave. The gang gets together and takes the bullet out of Thomas, but they can't really celebrate because they're super upset about Danny, who died right in front of them. Then the police chief shows up and meets with Inspector Campbell, telling him everything that happened, that Thomas was the one who killed Billy Campbell, and they also helped Freddie escape from prison. Since they pulled all the police out of the city, there are no witnesses left, so Thomas and his gang will stay free. Inspector Campbell gets really pissed off and frustrated because he feels responsible for all this. Meanwhile, Thomas and his gang are celebrating in the bar that day. The company became the only one in all of Birmingham allowed to hold races in the city. Part 2 begins, and we see Grace standing at the train station, but she's not alone. Inspector Campbell is with her, threatening to kill her and holding a gun. However, he can't actually kill her because Grace planned ahead and has a gun hidden in her bag. At the right moment, she shoots him and leaves him behind. After that, the story jumps to Birmingham exactly 2 years after the end of Season 1. We see two women in disguise walking until they reach a canal. They drop off two toy cars and then quickly walk away. After they leave, two bombs go off. They were hidden in that car in the pub. Right after, we head to Thomas and the Shelby family, there at Frederson's funeral. We know he died because of an epidemic that had hit the town earlier. After the funeral, Thomas goes to Ada Shelby and asks her to come live with them again like old times, since after Frederson's death, she doesn't need to be alone in London anymore. But she refuses, saying she's now part of the Sons, her husband's family, and has nothing to do with them. She also says she's become a communist like her husband, which would put her in danger if she lived with them, and it would seriously harm their work, so it's better for her to stay where she is. In London, but Thomas keeps talking and tells her he wants her to live with them. He's insistent because he's planning to expand his business in London, and that would put her in danger since his gangs there might try to harm him and his family. But she sticks to her opinion and leaves. You can see Thomas is really upset at that moment. He goes to talk to his Aunt Polly and asks her to try again with Ada. He tells her if Ada keeps refusing, he'll have his men protect her in London without her knowing. After Thomas leaves the funeral, he goes to Arthur's pub but is shocked when he finds out what happened as soon as he gets out of his car. A police officer involved in the investigation comes up to him and asks who he suspects, but Thomas doesn't give him a convincing answer, and as usual, they let him go. After that, Thomas heads to the Black Lion bar, the place where the Irish usually hang out. As soon as he sits down, a kid comes over and says, "Come with me." When Thomas follows him, he arrives at their headquarters where two guards meet him, search him thoroughly, and take his weapon and almost everything else. Then they cover his face so he can't see anything, and immediately take him to the judge's office. When they remove the cover from his face, he finds himself. A man stood in front of a lady and calmly asked who blew up his pub, the Peaky Blinders, but they didn't answer him and just mocked what he said and even threatened him. Then Thomas told them the king had made a truce with the Irish army and asked why they were still doing this, but no one replied. The man got up, grabbed a gun, put it to Thomas's head, and threatened to kill him. But Thomas didn't get nervous at all. He kept talking and said to the lady, "I know you. I know your name is Irene and your son's name is Sean. I even know where he studies, and if anything happens to me, he'll be killed." Irene got really scared for her son and begged the man to take the gun off Thomas's head. And sure enough, he does that. Then Irene tells Thomas that she also knows everything about him and it's best if they cooperate. So she asks him to kill a guy named Iman Dodgen. Thomas has no choice but to listen to her, so he leaves them and walks away. After that, we see their little brother asking Arthur to come with him because Thomas is holding a family meeting. Arthur agrees and they go there. The whole family is gathered, and at the meeting, Thomas surprises everyone by saying their business expansion in London will start tomorrow. Everyone is shocked, but no one objects, and they all leave the meeting. Then Debbie asks Thomas why he's in the neighborhood. Blackland tells her that the Irish were the ones who set off bombs in the pub, but he reassures her and says he'll fix everything later. She asks him why the expansion has to start tomorrow and why he's rushing it all of a sudden. Thomas tells her he has a plan. The two biggest gangs in London right now are the Italian and the Jewish gangs, and things haven't been great between them lately. They've actually been fighting for about 6 months. His plan is to team up with the Jewish gang and help them take down the Italian gang so they can take over their turf in the city. As for why he wants to start the plan tomorrow, that's because he found out that the gangs are busy with the horse race tomorrow, so it'll be easier then. She leaves it to her aunt and goes to see a fortune teller to find out about the future. The fortune teller tells her, "Polly, you've been having the same dream over and over for a while now." What she sees in the dream makes her scared for her kids, who were with her and were taken from her at the church before the war started. We find out that Aunt Polly was married and had a son and a daughter, but before the war began, her husband died. She went through a psychological shock and couldn't take care of her kids, so the church took them away. The fortune teller, upset, tells her that the dream means her daughter died, and Polly just leaves her like that. She's really upset and broken down. Meanwhile, at the same time, we see Thomas hiding in Ayman Dugan's spot, planning to kill him. And sure enough, at the right moment, he pulls out a gun, shoots him in the head, finishes him off, and runs away. The next day, Thomas gathers his brothers and they head to Sabini's casino, Sabini being the boss of the Italian mob in London. They walk into the casino pretending to be regular customers, but after a bit, they start beating up almost everyone inside, then leave. After that, Thomas goes to see Lizzie, a girl he met a while ago. He tells her he's set up a reward for her and asks her to write. Ali got the typing machine, and when he started using it, Thomas told him that he would help him out as his assistant. That way, Ali would have a decent job to earn from and wouldn't have to do anything else. Thomas said this because Lisa used to have a bad job, but thankfully she changed after she got her own typing machine. When Thomas leaves Lisa's place, he barely manages to get into his car before some of Sabini's men catch up to him. They beat him badly, take him away, and leave. At the same time, 3 other guys from Sabini's crew stop Ali outside his house, kidnap him, and then go to see Thomas. They tell Thomas, "You slipped up and attacked my men." The casino, and he also made a deal with the Jews behind my back. But things don't just go like that in London. He orders one of his men to kill Thomas. But before Thomas gets killed, someone shows up and starts shooting at them, and everyone runs like crazy. It turns out the guy who saved Thomas is Inspector Campbell. Campbell takes Thomas straight to the hospital. As for Aya, the ones who kidnapped her were Spiney's men. They took her to their car, but no one could do anything to her because Thomas's men arrive, fight them off, and rescue Aya. They try to talk to her and ask her to come with them, but she's scared and really upset. You leave them and walk away. Later, Thomas wakes up in the hospital and Inspector Campbell comes to see him. Campbell tells him, "I've been watching you for a long time and that's why I got to you before you got killed. You should be thanking me." But Thomas doesn't thank him at all. Instead, he keeps provoking him, reminding him that Grace was going to kill him because of him. From their conversation, we learn that Grace traveled to New York, married a businessman, and is living her life there. But Inspector Campbell doesn't care about Thomas's words or get upset. He tells Thomas he knows he killed Ayman Dojan because he was watching him and even has witnesses to the crime. Campbell warns Thomas that if he doesn't help and carry out the task he'll give him, he'll charge him with murder and have him executed. Then he leaves Thomas. He sets off right away, and that same night Thomas leaves the hospital looking really worn out. He goes to meet a few of his men, who are super shocked because they didn't expect to see him. They'd been told he wouldn't be out for at least a month. Of course, they're worried since he left early, but Thomas reassures them there's no time to waste and important stuff needs to get done. He tells them he has to head to London by boat right now, so he takes one of his men, Clee, with him to help out on the way. They set off, and after 4 days, Thomas and Clee finally arrive in London. Thomas' health has improved a lot by then. First, he meets the Jewish gang leader named Ulfi to make a deal. Ulfi asks him, "Who saved you?" Thomas replies, The police saved me. He tells him that he pays the police a lot of money for protection. Thomas also says that Spinney pays the police, and that's why they protect him and help him win every fight, even when he's hurt. But if he doesn't care at all. He tells Thomas, "You came to me thinking I'd need your help, but I've got everything figured out, and I'm going to win this war with God's help, no assistance from anyone." Then he pulls out a gun and threatens Thomas, saying, "I know that you. Before I betrayed you when I trusted you, and I definitely won't make the same mistake I'm making now." But Thomas didn't back down. He told him, "Listen to the offer first." He said he knows that Spinney controls all the races in the city and is even trying to take over the Fayens liquor factory. He promised to fix all that and provide 100 of his men at his service to help, plus he'd get the police to assist and protect him. He thought the offer was really good, so he agreed right away. After Thomas left Faye, he went to meet A and told her she needs to move out of the apartment because the place has become really dangerous for her. He gave her a key and some papers and said, "This is the key to her villa and this is the contract because he wrote it in her name. She can live in it safely now with her little son Carl. Also, the villa is here in London, so she agrees to it and gets really happy and thanks Thomas. Of course, she leaves him and walks away. Later, Thomas goes to attend Aunt Polly's birthday. When the party finishes, he takes her and his siblings and drops her off at a villa, telling her, "This is your villa, you can live here comfortably," and that he also put it in her name. Aunt Polly is obviously happy, but Thomas then says, "I know you went to the fortune teller because of your kids, and that's why I talked to some people at the church who are. They're gonna try to figure out where they are right now, because obviously they've grown up and some people have adopted them. They'll let me know as soon as they find out anything, and then I'll tell you." He also told her that if they're alive, he'll bring them all back and have them live with him in the villa. Polly was really surprised that Thomas knew all this, but she was also happy because maybe her kids could finally live with her. Then we move on to Inspector Campbell, who's in Minister Churchill's office. The minister has a letter sent by Thomas Shelby, and he reads it to Campbell, telling him that Thomas has been awarded the War Medal for all the service he's done for his country. He's ready to seal the deal again, but on the other hand, he wants to get an official import-export license so he can run his business legally. But Inspector Campbell objects, saying they can't just hand over a license like that to a gang leader. The minister insists, telling him to give the guy what he wants. Campbell gets really angry and says fine, he'll do it, but only after Thomas completes the mission they want him to do, and then they'll kill him. Churchill says no problem, just make sure the mission gets done first. Meanwhile, we go back to Thomas, who managed to find out where Michael, his cousin's son, is. He tries to talk to Michael's adoptive mom and Michael himself, but Michael's adoptive mom, she's not giving Thomas a chance and is telling him to leave because, of course, he's asking to take her son, who's supposed to be her son right now. So naturally, she's gonna get mad at him. But Thomas gives Michael a card and tells him, "This is our address. If you want to see your real mom, come by." Then he leaves. After that, Thomas goes to Polly and tells her that he knows her daughter died, but Michael is alive and he's talked to him. He says Michael might think about it and come, and if he doesn't, Thomas will tell her when Michael turns 18, so Michael can be free to choose who he wants to be with. But Polly doesn't care about what he says and threatens to shoot him if he doesn't tell her where her son Michael is. But Thomas, he stays calm and tells her, "Kill me, and you'll be the one who loses. You'll never find Michael's place." So Polly leaves her and walks out really angry. Later, everyone gathers at Arthur's gun shop opening because after the explosion, they fixed it and reopened it. The next day, Aunt Polly is walking down the street and runs into her son Michael, but she doesn't recognize him. Michael asks her about someone named Elizabeth Gray. That's actually Aunt Polly's real name. She asks him what Aunt Polly wants from her, and Michael tells her that she's his mother and he wants to meet her. Aunt Polly can't believe it at first, but then she gets really happy and takes him with her. She takes him to her house, offers him lots of drinks and keeps chatting with him happily. Suddenly, John and Arthur burst in, pointing guns at Michael and ask her who he is. But before they do anything, Thomas arrives and tells them that Michael is Polly's cousin. Everyone welcomes him, leaves him with Aunt Polly, and they walk away. Later in London, 100 men from the Peaky Blinders led by a guy named Billy arrive. They're coming to London to join Thomas's men, as Thomas arranged. Meanwhile, Thomas is with his family and asks Aunt Polly, since she's in charge of the family's safe and money. He asks her for £1,000 because he wants to buy a strong, purebred Arabian horse to race and beat a Spanish horse. Everyone's shocked since that was a huge amount back then. But since Aunt Polly knows Thomas definitely has a solid plan and won't lose the money, she agrees right away and gives him the amount he wants. Later, Thomas and his siblings, along with Michael, Aunt Polly's son, go to the auction. After a while, Thomas manages to win the Arabian horse he wanted. At the auction, he meets a woman named May, who tells him she's a horse trainer and wants to train the Arabian horse he just won because it's really strong and beautiful. Thomas takes her card and tells her he'll think about it and call her. Then he leaves and walks away. The next day, Thomas goes to the police station to meet Inspector Campbell and find out what mission they want him to carry out. But things don't go smoothly because Thomas is surprised to see the Irish leaders, a man and a woman, in Campbell's office. Campbell tells him they're working for him, and that the Irish army is now allied with the king, helping him out and keeping an eye on Thomas too. Campbell explains the mission. Basically, Thomas has to kill a corrupt English officer. Since he's an officer, it can't look like someone from their side did it, but Thomas can kill him easily and discreetly. Thomas doesn't have time to respond. Thomas either agrees or refuses because the Irish leader is threatening him, saying he has no choice. Either he kills him or he gets killed himself. But Thomas doesn't care about their threats. He tells them he won't kill anyone, then leaves and walks out. He finds Inspector Campbell and tries to convince him, saying he made a deal with the minister and in return he'll get his import-export license, and he can't go back on that. But Thomas adds, "I didn't object. It's the Irish leader you have inside, Donald Henry, who's teaming up with a group of Irish officers who don't want to cooperate with the king, and he's right here. We're telling them everything that's happening while you're just sitting there like an idiot," so Thomas doesn't give Inspector Campbell a chance to reply. He kept talking and said, "I'm sure about every word I'm saying, and I will do the job, but just one condition. When you tell me you've gotten rid of that spy." Then Thomas took the file from him, which had info about the officer he was supposed to kill, and left. At the casino owned by Tommy, Arse arrived with some of his Peaky Blinders gang and stormed the place, beating up everyone inside. Arthur went to hit Tommy's assistant and told everyone in the casino that this place now belongs to the Peaky Blinders. At the same time, Thomas was sitting in his office working when Michael, his cousin Polly's son, came in and said he wanted to apply for the accountant job advertised in the newspaper. But Thomas didn't agree because Aunt Polly had asked him to keep her son away from the family business since she didn't believe he'd actually live with her. Michael kept pushing and trying to convince him until Thomas said, "Okay, I agree, but you won't start working unless Aunt Polly agrees too." Later, May came and met Thomas at his place because Thomas had contacted her to come and saddle the horse. She showed up, took the horse, and left. Then the whole family gathers at the casino to celebrate Michael joining the gang and starting to work with them, because we know Uncle Polly finally agreed to let him join. They start the celebration, and Thomas gives him a normal gun. Of course, Michael is really happy and they all celebrate together in a joyful, family atmosphere. After that, Thomas meets with his brothers and Uncle Polly to tell them he started working in importing and exporting liquor with the Jewish gang leader Alfie. Thomas makes a deal with Arthur to be in charge of the business between them and Alfie, and Arthur agrees. Everything's set, and things are running smoothly in the Shelby family, but not quite yet. Sevny likes to go to Alfie to make a deal with him, but Alfie wasn't keen on teaming up at first because Sevny has always hated the Jews. But Sevny apologizes and tells him that from now on, they'll be united and won't let the Peaky Blinders interfere between them. In return, He promises to have the whole police force under Ulfi's control, and also that Ulfi and his family will get a share of all the horse races in London. Ulfi sees the offer is really good and that he'll make a big profit, so he agrees with Sevni. They decide to stop anyone from the Peaky Blinders entering London, and they also agree to betray Thomas. Meanwhile, Thomas has arrived at Mimi's house and can't believe that she's rich and has a whole mansion all to herself. So Thomas felt safe about the horse once he realized there was no way they could steal it. The next day, he goes to set Billy up at Ulfi's place to work out the deal, not knowing that Ulfi plans to betray them. Ulfi locks them inside the place, and one of his gang kills Billy. Before Aras can react, they tie him up and threaten Ulfi, saying they'll kill him. Then they start beating him and his men until they give up and Aras faints. A little later, the police raid the place. Ulfi tells them that Arthur killed Billy, which is why they beat and tied him up until the police arrived. Everyone there backs up this story. So the police just take the bribe and walk away, and unfortunately the troubles don't end there. Because on the other hand, Tommy goes to his casino with his men and beats up all Thomas's guys. He tells them, if any of the Peaky Blinders even think about getting close to the casino, they'll get killed. And the problems keep piling up. Then Inspector Campbell decides to crash the party. He goes to Aunt Polly's house, barges in, frames her son Michael, and arrests him. When Tommy finds out what happened, he immediately goes to meet Inspector Campbell, furious. He says, "We had an agreement. You were supposed to protect me and the family, and now you're betraying us." But Inspector Campbell doesn't care. He talked to him and said, "You didn't carry out the mission and you didn't kill the officer I told you about, so I arrested your brother Ars and your cousin Michael, and I won't let them go until you complete the mission." Thomas got really angry and told him, "The officer's house I'm supposed to kill is heavily guarded. It's gonna take time before I can do anything so I don't get caught." But Inspector Campbell didn't care about any of that and said, "Your brother and cousin aren't leaving here until you finish the mission." Thomas couldn't respond, left angry, and went to meet with his family to face the rest of the troubles. When Aunt Polly saw him, she got mad at him. He tells him Michael has to get out as fast as possible, while John knows the police took all their booze and confiscated it. Not only that, they also took all the bars under their control, put them under Savini and Ulfi's protection, and even arrested all the guys who were at Savini's casino in London. Later, she goes to her Uncle Polly, meets Inspector Campbell, and begs him to let her son go, promising she'll do anything he asks. By the way, Inspector Campbell was about to let Michael go after talking with Thomas because he didn't want to compete with him, but he also said he'd take advantage of the situation and told Polly, "I'll let Michael go, but on one condition." They spend time together, but Polly refuses at first. In the end, though, she decides to give in so her son can get out. She agrees to do what he wants. The next day, Polly goes to the place and waits for Michael. After a while, he comes out. Aunt Polly tries to talk to him, but Michael is really upset with her and doesn't want to speak. He tells her that the officer and everyone at the place were mocking him, asking what she did to get him out. He finishes speaking without waiting for her response, then leaves. Meanwhile, John goes to meet Arsmas and asks exactly what he wanted. When he meets Arsma's relative Arsner doesn't care what he says and tells him, "All of Thomas's men witnessed what happened to me, and it's clear that this will definitely be counted against him." But John told him, "Don't worry, Thomas has planned for everything." Next, we move to Tommy, one of Thomas's guys. Shelby goes to stand in front of the officer's house, the officer Thomas is supposed to kill. One of the officer's guards comes up and tells Shelby to leave, but Thomas tries to stall and distract him for as long as possible until John arrives. John then places a bomb in front of the door and walks away. When Tommy sees this, he knows it's done. The bomb is inside now. He walks away, leaving the guard behind. A little while later, boom, the bomb explodes. Inspector Campbell finds out what happened and goes to meet Thomas, saying, "You were supposed to." The officer doesn't get killed by blowing up a bomb in front of his house. When you did that, the officer was moved from his house to another one, and the guards at his place increased a lot, so it became impossible to kill him. He even told Arthur, "Your brother's with me, and by the way, I could sentence him to death." But Thomas didn't care about what he said and told him, "I'll find a way to get him out. As for the officer, I'll kill him too. I have a plan." Michael said, "You want me to kill the officer at his house, and then they'll sentence me to death. I won't do that. We'll complete the mission without getting caught." Thomas's plan was to buy a horse and enter the race, then kill the officer right in the middle of it. The crowd, the celebrations, and no one's gonna know who actually killed him. We also find out that Thomas didn't bring the horse for the race from the start, but to carry out his plan and kill the officer. At that moment, Arthur was just sitting there, totally amazed by Thomas's cleverness. He really didn't see any other option but to let Thomas go ahead with his plan exactly how he wanted. So, he lets him go. The next day, an officer goes to Arthur and tells him to get ready because he's going to be released. When Arthur asks how he's getting out, the officer says that all the men who witnessed against him have changed their testimony, so there's nothing holding him anymore and he's free to go. Arthur is really surprised but also really happy. And actually, on the same day he goes out, and we'll see soon how he left. Anyway, as soon as he steps out, he finds Tommy waiting in a car looking super happy. So he gets in with him, and Tommy tells him that his brother Thomas is waiting for a call to make sure he got out safely. At the same time, Thomas is on his way with one of his gang members to meet Ulfi, but they get stopped by Ulfi's assistant, who asks Thomas to come in alone. So Thomas goes in by himself and leaves the guy outside. Then he follows Ulfi's assistant to a certain spot, pretends to bend down to tie his bootlace, and secretly leaves something there without anyone noticing. He gets up, keeps going on his way behind Ulfi's assistant like nothing happened. As soon as he enters and meets Ulfi, he calls Aras to let him know he's out of jail after finishing his term. He sits down and talks with Ulfi, and from their conversation, we find out that Spiny betrayed Ulfi, fooled him, and didn't give him his share of the races like they had agreed. That's why Ulfi decided to betray him back. When Thomas found out what happened, he immediately offered Ulfi a deal to cooperate with him. In return, they'd bring the partner into the import-export company, so Ulfi could legally export and import his alcohol. His share in the company would be 20%, and in return, Ulfi would get the drug. He's in jail, and that's exactly what he did. He told his men to change their testimonies. Thomas J. is supposed to come now to sign the contract together, but anyone who betrays you will betray you again. That's what Phil is doing. He brought out the contract and wanted Thomas to sign it, but the percentage for Phil in the new contract was 100%, and Thomas had nothing at all. Of course, Thomas refuses, so Phil's assistant pulls out a gun, points it at him, and threatens to kill him if he doesn't sign. But Thomas stays super calm and surprises them by saying that when he tied his boot, he actually planted a bomb among the barrels of alcohol. If he doesn't get out of there now, the guy waiting outside will blow it up and the whole place will go up. Then he says. They took the bomb codes with them and Alpha was freaking out. He negotiated with Thomas again, and at that moment they finally agreed that his share would be 35%. After that, Thomas went ahead with his plan, met up with his brothers and the rest of the gang, and told them they were all going to attend the race, armed, so they could grab all of Sabini's race records and destroy them. He also explained that it would be easy because Sabini's men thought the police would protect them. But on the other hand, Thomas had an agreement with the police that no one would interfere, and he told them this because he planned to kill the English officer during the race. All doors will be open, and things will be easy with his men. Sure enough, everyone starts moving and heads to the race. Meanwhile, Thomas goes to meet Lizzie and asks her to lure the English officer away from the race so Thomas can take him out without anyone seeing. Lizzie manages to lure the officer away, and just before the officer can do anything to her, Thomas shows up like she said. They fight, punching each other, but in the end, Thomas manages to take him down. After that, Thomas goes to meet Sabini, provokes him and says, The war has started. What we had between us is over, and I'm the one who came out on top. So Sabini pulls a gun to kill Thomas, but Thomas tells him the place is packed with police officers and high-ranking officials. If you fire a shot, you'll be arrested in a second. Sabini has no choice but to stay quiet. At the same time, Arthur and his gang beat up Sabini's men, took their race records, and destroyed them. After that, Thomas and the Peaky Blinders took control of the entire race scene, and Sabini left empty-handed. Meanwhile, Inspector Campbell calls Minister Churchill from a phone booth to let him know the mission went exactly as planned. So suddenly Aunt Polly bursts into the cabin and asks, "Thomas, did you tell her where I am?" Without any warning, she pulls out a gun from her bag and points it at Campbell, saying, "You took advantage of me in the worst way, and that's why I'm going to finish you off." And she actually kills him, then leaves him in the cabin, feeling really happy and pleased. Then everyone gathers at their pub to celebrate what they've achieved and how they've completely taken over London. The lead is theirs now. Later, Thomas goes to Michael and talks to him, saying he wants to get married. The third season starts, and we see Thomas Shelby, his siblings, and the whole family at church. We know this is the big day, Thomas's wedding day. After a bit, a man comes in holding Thomas's bride. When Thomas lifts the veil, we find out his bride or wife is Grace. The priest quickly starts the wedding ceremony, and once it's done, they head to Thomas Shelby's palace where they're having their wedding party. The party kicks off, and we learn it's been 2 years since the events of Season 2. Thomas gathers his brothers away from the party and Grace's family, asking them to be super respectful so they don't ruin the most important day of his life. He also tells them not to cause any trouble with anyone from Grace's family. What we know is that they're all soldiers or officers in the English army. After a while, Thomas leaves them and goes to Grace's room. From their conversation, we learn that Grace was actually married, but her husband died from illness. After her husband passed away, she reached out to Thomas again and told him she loved him. They decided to move past everything that happened before and try to start fresh. They agreed to be together for a while before getting officially married to see if they could really make it work. And that's exactly what happened. After some time, Grace gave birth to their son, Charlie, and that's when Thomas decided to marry her officially. It's not a happy story, but it was something she needed to understand at the time. There's a girl named Lizzie who meets Arthur and Michael and starts talking to them about an Italian guy, Hayne Angel, who got burned. She loves him a lot and wants to spend the rest of her life with him. But Michael replies coldly, telling her that loving any Italian is forbidden as long as she's working with the Peaky Blinders. Then they leave her and walk away. Later, everyone gathers at the wedding, and Arislam gives a speech to Thomas, basically saying he's happy for him and congratulates him. After the speech, the party kicks off. Then she goes to Uncle Polly and meets a Russian guy at the wedding who says he wants to talk to Thomas to check on their work stuff. So the Russian guy steps outside the wedding to talk to Thomas. Arthur and John show up and start searching him really thoroughly to see if he's carrying any weapons. After a bit, Thomas arrives and they start talking. From their conversation, we find out that lately Thomas has been working with the Russians in arms trading. Around that same time, there was a war in Russia between the noble leaders, basically the Duke, and on the other side, the Soviet Socialist Union. Thomas was supplying weapons to the Duke so he could fight against the Soviet Socialist Union. The Russian guy was supposed to be here because of an agreement between the Duke and Thomas was supposed to give a deposit to Thomas for a deal that was about to happen soon, but Thomas wasn't really interested in any of that and was really upset because they came to talk about the deal and hand him the deposit on his wedding day. And that wasn't the only thing bothering Thomas. He got angry when the Russian guy told him the money wasn't with him, but with someone from the leader's family, the one Thomas supplies weapons to, and that she was supposed to be waiting at the train station. Then Thomas said, "Don't worry, I'll send someone to get it." Meanwhile, we see the person Thomas is supposed to send to pick it up, who basically turns out to be the police chief. We know that the city's police are completely under Thomas's control now, She actually meets the police chief, and they go to the mansion together. But when they get there, Thomas doesn't welcome her or show any respect, which really annoys her since she's supposed to be nobility. Thomas ignores what she says and gets really angry, saying it's not okay to talk to him during work on his wedding day. Then he asks her to give him the money and leave the whole city. As soon as Thomas gets the money from her, he has an officer rush her to the station so she can leave, and that's exactly what happens. Then we're back at the party, where she's talking to a man and they're exchanging words. They kind of liked each other a bit, so they started getting to know each other. The guy told her he lives in London and works as a painter. Then he asked her to come visit him in London one day. She told him she'd try. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we see Thomas and Ursula heading back to the party. Ursula tells him that Ursula couldn't have worked with the Russians and that he should have been sad with them. But Thomas disagrees and tries to reassure him, saying he knows what he's doing. After the wedding, Ursula goes to talk to his wife Linda at the synagogue, and they start chatting. From their conversation, we learn that Linda is religious and that Ursula has been like that ever since he met her. He feels guilty for being away from his faith and wants to quit the gang life, find an honest job, and live a decent life, staying far away from all that stuff. The next day, Thomas arrives at the port and meets the gang leader. When they see him, they ask Thomas about the weapons and armored cars that were supposed to have been smuggled out from the army but are now at the dock. After he finishes talking, he asks for the key to the pier where the weapons and cars are kept. But the boss disagrees and refuses to give him the key because those weapons and cars are under his unit's control. Thomas loses his calm and tells him he knows the boss and his whole family, and if he doesn't get what he asked for, he'll take them down. So the boss of the workers backtracked on what he said and decided to give Thomas the key to the dock because the whole city knew Thomas Shelby and that he could easily pull it off. Sure enough, Thomas took the keys from him, left him behind, and walked away. Then Thomas went to the dock to check that the weapons and cars were all there and everything was fine. After that, Thomas went to meet Dijak from the Russian noble leaders but couldn't find him. Instead, he met Father John Hughes, who works as a middleman between Thomas and the Russian leaders and is also a priest. When they asked Thomas about Dijak, John told him they didn't trust that Thomas could get them the weapons and cars they wanted, and he started mocking him. He also told him that the Duke was too important to meet with some gang guy, but Thomas didn't get caught up in that and calmly said the cars were there. He even went himself to the port to check. Then John asked him how many there were, just to make sure Thomas really saw them. Thomas told him there were exactly 27 cars, and that they were already under his control and he could hand them over any time. John was really happy because he knew Thomas actually had the cars. He gave Thomas a paper with the Duke's address in London and asked him to go meet him today, then he left. On the other side, Aras and the rest of the gang were sitting together, gathered when someone came to them. An Italian guy named Fonget Shinkrita straight up told them that 2 years ago, Thomas, with the gang's help, took out Spinney and his crew and even took their place. Since then, there haven't been any problems between the Italians and the Peaky Blinders. The Italians respected the Peaky Blinders a lot and lived peacefully with them in the city, but they're furious about Angel Hanna, who's supposedly their son, and they're not going to let that slide. Shinkrita told them to pay whatever amount they demand and also stay completely out of horse racing. In return, they'll leave them to work in peace and no one will interfere with their business. But Joe didn't pay any attention to what he said. He told him it wasn't the Peaky Blinders who burned the shop and that they didn't know who did it. But Cheetah disagreed and said it was definitely the Peaky Blinders because Angel had talked to Lizzie and found out. John kept mocking him, then started threatening him, saying if his son got near Lizzie again, he'd shoot him and finish him off. Shankrita didn't care and told them he wouldn't stay silent about what was happening and he'd get justice for himself and his son. After that, he left. A little while later, Aunt Polly met John and told him he couldn't talk to Shankrita like that, and that because of what he did, the Peaky Blinders would get involved again. A second later, he was at war with the Italians. After that, she asked him to go talk to Shankrita and try to calm things down between them, because the Peaky Blinders couldn't afford to get into another war with the Italians. Even if they did, they'd lose a lot. But Joe didn't care about what she said. He told her that after what happened to Sabini, the Italians wouldn't be able to do anything, and that Shankrita's words were just empty threats. Polly had no choice but to tell John she was going to inform Thomas about what happened, and he would figure out what to do. But John also objected to her and got really annoyed with her, then left. After that, we moved to Thomas at the Duke's mansion. Mikkel started talking about himself, his roots, and his noble family background. He didn't forget to mention the girl Thomas met, the one he gave money to, who turned out to be his niece, Tatiana. But Thomas didn't care about Mikkel's story or his memories. He just asked when he'd get the money, because Thomas doubted Mikkel could actually pay him back. Their fight over the Soviet Union alliance had practically drained all their funds. Mikkel got upset and disagreed, saying all that was just rumors. He insisted they still had their money and hadn't lost anything, but that was the image they wanted people to believe to ease the pressure on them. They were able to plan the war casually, and right away, Michael took a diamond piece, gave it to Thomas, and told him to consider it a down payment or part of the money for the deal. He started telling Thomas that they had a lot of diamonds and that he'd pay for the deal with diamonds, not cash. Thomas felt a bit reassured, took the diamond piece, and they agreed on everything. Then they left. Meanwhile, John decided to finish things off himself. He went to Angel's place, beat him up, and even knocked out one of his eyes. To make things worse, he told Angel he was hitting him on the gang's orders before leaving. When the news got to Thomas, he got really pissed and rushed off too. He meets up with his family, and when Thomas arrives, we realize he's not angry or anything. He tells John it's good he didn't listen to the public, Polly or Arthur. He went and hit Angel, then continued talking, telling Arthur and Polly that they can't apologize because if they do it once, they'll get used to it. The Italians can't be trusted, and if they apologize, they'll think we're weak and then they'll start a war with us again, and this time for real. But what John did actually made their position stronger, and Thomas didn't stop there. He also ordered them to burn down the Italians' pubs so they'd never think about standing up to the Peaky Blinders again. Meanwhile, Angel was becoming. At the hospital, he's being treated for the injuries John caused him. When Shankrita arrives, he's really upset about what happened to his son and tells one of his men to take care of Thomas because he knows Thomas is the gang leader and probably the one who told John to do it. Meanwhile, on the other side, Thomas is sitting with Grace at their house and tells her he has a surprise. He gives her a necklace with a diamond piece he took from Duke Michael, and Grace is super happy about it. After that, Thomas and Grace start talking, and we find out that Thomas set up a charity in Birmingham, and it's supposed to. He's throwing a huge party in town to celebrate the opening of the association, and he's inviting all the important people in the area. Of course, Thomas didn't do any of this out of kindness or anything like that. God forbid. No, Thomas did it so people would think he's doing charity work, and so when he runs for Parliament, he can actually win. So, Thomas asks Grace to wear the necklace at the opening party since she'll be in charge of collecting donations for the association. The day of the party arrives, and Thomas and Grace are there greeting the guests. Among the guests is Duchess Tatiana, who as soon as she walks in, goes straight to talk to Thomas and Grace and tells them that she's really happy and excited to be part of such a big charity event. She thanks Grace and tells her how thrilled she is about the party, saying she never expected her husband Thomas to know all these important people. While they're talking, an Italian guy, sent by Shankrita, suddenly shows up. Without any warning, he pulls out a gun and tells Thomas he's here for revenge. In the next second, he fires at Thomas, ruining the party. Everyone starts running. The bullet doesn't hit Thomas, but unfortunately it hits Grace, and she dies instantly. Thomas completely breaks down, unable to believe what just happened, screaming as he holds Grace's lifeless body in a very emotional scene. Meanwhile, Arthur grabs the Italian guy. Win and John keep beating him up with all their might. Then, 2 weeks pass since that incident, and we see Thomas sitting in front of Sister Grace, really sad, talking to her and telling her how much he loved her. After that, Thomas goes back to his mansion, and Arthur and John come to talk to him for a bit, trying to pull him out of his depression. They tell him that recently they went to the hospital, killed Angel, and took out most of the Italians with him. The rest escaped to New York, and they also say that among those who got away was Shankrita. Thomas gets really angry and tells them that no matter what, they have to bring him here to finish him off. Thomas himself, and right the next day, Arthur and John manage to find Shankrita's place. He's there with his wife, who's really scared and keeps trying to trick them so he can get a week to live, but they don't care. John pulls out his gun and keeps threatening that if Shankrita doesn't come with them right now, he'll kill him in front of his wife. Shankrita says goodbye to his wife, keeps telling her he loves her, then leaves with them. After that, they take him to a remote spot, tie him to a chair, and Thomas shows up. Thomas keeps taunting Shankrita a lot and threatening him, but Shankrita doesn't answer back because he's so scared he's shaking while sitting right there in front of him. He didn't care about any of that and told him he'd keep torturing him all day, and in the end he'd kill him. But Arthur got mad, pulled out his gun, and ended it. He told Thomas that what he was doing was wrong and that he shouldn't have kept messing with him. That's why he killed him. Then he texted Thomas saying, "We're not barbarians to do that," and left without waiting for a reply. Thomas was shocked by what happened and didn't know what to say except to ask John to get rid of the body. He left too and walked away. The next day, Thomas went to Duke Michael's palace to meet him, but this time the Duke wasn't alone. He was with Father John and his niece. Tatiana and his wife Isabel are joined by Thomas, who without any introduction starts making a deal with them about how he'll hand over the weapons and cars. He tells them he'll smuggle the cars out of the port his way and ship them by train heading to London, and they'll receive them there. After chatting for a bit, Thomas notices that Isabel, Duke Michael's wife, is actually running the whole operation, and the Duke is just a figurehead. So Thomas pulls a handkerchief from his pocket, writes, "I have secrets" on it, and gives it to Isabel, hoping she won't tell anyone, since Father John Hughes is dining with them and is about to leave. Everyone's puzzled by Thomas's behavior, but despite that, Isabel asks. Tatiana is dropping Thomas off, and when they leave the palace, Thomas tells her that John Hughes is secretly working with the Soviet Union and betraying them. Because of that, he wants to kill him and get rid of him since his presence will cause them a lot of trouble. Tatiana is really surprised by what Thomas says, but Thomas doesn't care and tells her he's sure about every word. He also asks her to inform Duchess Isabel about this and get her permission so Thomas can easily take care of John Hughes. Thomas adds that he won't go through with the deal unless they let him eliminate John Hughes. The next day, Aunt Bala goes to the church to meet the priest and confess her sins. She sits with him and admits she's from the Shelby family. She also tells him she killed Inspector Campbell and has been feeling guilty ever since. She says they're planning to kill a priest soon because he's involved with them in their work, and she's scared that killing this priest would be a huge sin. The priest tries to get her to open up more, but she doesn't say anything else and leaves quickly. Meanwhile, Thomas gathers his brothers and tells them about the latest developments in his deal with the Russians, and also tells them that after they carry out, the money from this deal will be split evenly between him and his siblings, and after that, they'll stop doing anything illegal and start working legally in America. He promised Grace that once this deal was done, they'd start a completely new life. Then Aras said, "I also promised Linda that after this deal, we travel together to some faraway country and start fresh, away from everything we're involved in here." After that, Thomas went back to his mansion and was surprised to find Tatiana waiting for him in his office. He welcomed her warmly, then asked why she was visiting. Tatiana, without beating around the bush, said she came because Isabel agreed to kill John Hughes and she was there to inform him. Thomas left and met his Aunt Polly, who told him she was scared they might kill Reverend John Hughes. but Thomas tried to reassure her, saying he didn't really know what was going on and that no one did, and that everything would be fine. Meanwhile, we see John Hughes at the church meeting the priest that Aunt Polly had confessed to, who immediately told him everything. That's when John found out they were planning to kill him and decided to figure out a way to fix the problem. The next day, we see Thomas heading to the place where John Hughes is, planning to kill him in the crowd without anyone noticing. As soon as John shows up and starts walking, John followed him until he entered the building and went after Thomas, but he didn't expect what was waiting for him. Some of John's men jumped him, beat him up, and took his weapon. Then John Hughes showed up and told him he knew everything. They kept beating Thomas until he passed out. Once he was out, they took him to a safe place so no one would see. When he came to, John told him that if he wanted to live, he should go to Dak Mikhail and his wife Tatiana and tell them the info was wrong, that John wasn't going to take them or anything. The person who gave the false info did it just to get rid of Father John Hughes, nothing more. John kept talking, but this time he threatened and said, "If I don't do this, we'll kill your son Charlie." Then they took Thomas, all beaten up like that, and threw him in front of his palace. When Thomas got to the palace, he told his brothers to tighten the security so no one could get in. Right away, Thomas got himself ready and went to Duke Michael's palace. He found everyone gathered there, including Father John Hughes. As soon as he arrived, Thomas told them straight up that he was wrong about John Hughes, that he wasn't a traitor, and that the information he got was wrong. Everyone was really surprised by what Thomas said, but he didn't give them a chance to respond because he excused himself and left right away. He went to his sister's house, Ida Shelby, and he was really exhausted to the point that he was leaning on his hand while walking. But Thomas asked her to take him to the hospital, and they did. At the hospital, they found out he had a brain concussion. Thank God, after some time, the doctors managed to treat Thomas safely. Then Michael came to him and told him he knew about the priest and everything that had happened, and that he was going to finish him off himself. Then he left. After 3 months, Thomas was back to normal and managed to regain his health. Tommy came to meet him as they had agreed, and as soon as they sat down, Thomas told him he had bought land next to the Duke's palace. Mikkel went straight away and asked Tommy to start digging under the house in the basement. From their conversation, we find out that Thomas knew the diamond was in a room in the basement of Duke Mikkel's palace. That's why he decided to get the land next door and dig a tunnel until he reached that room, so they could quietly steal all the diamonds they had. But he couldn't finish talking to Tommy because the maid interrupted them and told Thomas that his brothers had arrived, not just them, but also some guy they didn't know who called himself the Lost Jew. So Thomas went to his office to see who this guy was, and it turned out to be him. Thomas welcomed him and they started talking, and Thomas found out he was working. Right now, he's with the Russians, and they're giving him weapons in exchange for the diamond cutter. We know Thomas was the one who sent Ulfi because Ulfi really knows diamonds, and his job is to cut the diamonds himself and make sure they're perfect. So Ulfi agrees with him, and they actually make a deal together. While they're talking, John and Eraser show up, and Eraser gets really upset when he sees Ulfi, but Ulfi keeps things calm so the plan can move forward. He goes to apologize to Eraser and his brothers for what he did before. Meanwhile, Thomas tells them he couldn't find anyone else who knows diamonds well enough to get the cutter except Ulfi. One day, Thomas gathers his brothers, and they head to the Duke's palace. Mikkel actually went to check out the diamonds there before handing over the weapons. As soon as he arrives, Bella Tatiana is waiting for them, welcomes them, takes Thomas, and they go down to the diamond room in the basement. Inside, Mikkel and his wife are there, along with the guy who came to inspect the diamonds himself. So the guy starts carefully and quietly examining the diamonds, and at the same time, he's calculating the price for each piece to settle on the deal. After finishing the inspection, Thomas agrees on everything with Duke Mikkel, greets him, and leaves. Then Thomas goes on to continue his plan and meets the men that Tommy brought along. They start digging down to the spot where they're going to dig, and Thomas pulls out a map and begins explaining what they should do next. Then Thomas gets together with his siblings, and they go to open the Grace Educational Foundation, which is free. We find out Thomas opened it to provide completely free education for poor kids as a charity in memory of Chris. Then Aunt Hewlett and the letter show up, followed by Thomas himself, who tells everyone that their kids will get the best care here, and he'll stay with them until they grow up and can find respectable jobs with their diplomas. After that, Thomas goes and stands in front of a painted picture in the foundation, keeps talking to it, but then Father John comes up and says. He watches him everywhere and has his men all over the place to make sure he doesn't think about betraying him again. He also tells him he'll set up an office for himself at the educational institution. Then he goes on to tell Thomas that over the next 24 hours, he's going to ask Thomas for some things, and Thomas has to do them otherwise. The price will be his son, Charlie. But Thomas doesn't respond and goes out to meet the people at the opening, who want to take pictures with him. He actually takes photos with them, and at that moment, one of the servants comes and takes his son Charlie to get pictures too. But after he's done with the crowd and the photos, Thomas doesn't find his son Charlie anywhere, and that's when he gets really worried and rushes off. He asks his brothers, but none of them know where he is, so they all start searching for Charlie everywhere. Thomas goes out into the street, calling his name over and over, scared and worried like crazy, but he can't find him. Then Aris shows up and tells him some people saw Charlie being kidnapped and shoved into a car. Thomas completely breaks down, but Arthur tries to calm him down and says he's already called the police. Everyone is out looking for him all over the city until they find him. Arthur asks Thomas to go to their headquarters with Aunt Polly to calm down and wait for a call. Sure enough, Thomas and Aunt Polly get to the HQ, and he's super worried, but he doesn't wait for the call because Ada Shelby goes up to them and lets them know there's a priest waiting outside in a car. Thomas rushes out and finds out it's Father John, who he knows is the one who kidnapped his son Charlie. This is totally normal for him, so Thomas breaks down and feels like he has no choice but to tell John he'll do whatever he asks, as long as he doesn't hurt his son. John tells him, without any introduction, that first, he'll blow up the train carrying the weapons to make sure they get destroyed and don't reach Duke Michael and his men. And second, all the diamonds they steal have to be brought to him by tomorrow morning. Thomas is surprised because John already knew he was planning to steal the diamonds, but he goes back and tells John that the blast will take 2 days, 2 days to get the diamonds for him. But John didn't care about what he said and told him, "If you don't blow up the train and bring me the diamonds by tomorrow morning, you'll be at your son Charlie's funeral." So Thomas had no choice but to agree to his demands to keep his son from getting killed. Later, Thomas met with John and the others and secretly asked them to plant explosives on the train carrying the weapons and armored cars. His brothers were surprised, but Thomas didn't wait for their response and told them, "After you plant the explosives, stay at the train station. If I call you, cancel the bombing. But if I don't call, stick to the plan as is." After they blew up the train, Thomas went to Ulfi to meet him. When he saw him, Ulfi gave him a paper with the names of the people who were going to buy the diamonds from him, just like they had agreed. Then they stood and talked for a bit, and from their conversation, Thomas realized that Ulfi was the one who told Father John that he was going to steal the diamonds. Thomas got really angry, pulled out a gun, and threatened him. Then he attacked him and kept hitting him. At that moment, Ulfi's assistant pulled out a gun and was about to kill Thomas, but before he could, Michael arrived and managed to kill Ulfi's assistant. Ulfi then got up and started apologizing to Thomas, telling him he didn't know they were going to kidnap his son, and to prove it. What he said is true, and he doesn't lie. He knows the priest's address. So Thomas asked Michael to go to the address the guy gave him. Maybe he'll find Charlie there. He also told him to kill Father John if he sees him. Then Thomas went to the digging site to help the men digging there because he wasn't sure if Michael would find Charlie at the priest's place or not. At the same time, John and Ursa arrived at the train and planted the explosives like Thomas had asked. Michael managed to get to Father John's place, found him, and started threatening him with a gun. John pretended to be scared and told him, "I'll give you the kid, just leave me alone." Michael caught his breath for a bit and John Hughes took the chance to strike him hard. The gun fell from his hand and John kept hitting him. Michael started fighting back too, until finally Michael managed to overpower him and killed him. Then he quickly went to his brothers to tell them not to blow up the train. Unfortunately, he got there too late and couldn't stop them. The train exploded. At the same time, Michael arrived at their base with Charlie. Meanwhile, Thomas was coming out of the tunnel with all the diamonds. When Thomas found out his son was finally back, he couldn't believe it and rushed to their base to check on him. After that, he went. Thomas is dealing with Tatiana because she made a deal with him to steal the diamonds. She buys the diamonds from him, gives him money for the stolen gems, and tells him she's going to Austria. Thomas says goodbye, takes the money and leaves. When he gets home, his whole family is there with the money behind them. Then he apologizes for all the problems they've been having lately, admitting most of it was his fault. After that, he specifically apologizes to Arsar, saying he should have listened and not worked with the Russians. He hands out the money as they agreed before, and tells Arsar that now he and his wife Linda can finally travel like they wanted. He wished for it and told John, "You can do the same, and with your money you can buy a house anywhere and live in peace." Then everyone started celebrating the money, and everyone was really happy. But Thomas didn't just let it go like that. He made them realize that after killing John Hughes, his men, and those who helped him, things wouldn't just end there. And that's exactly what happened. Everything was taken from Thomas and his men. Thomas also told them that everyone was wanted by the police. Arthur and John are accused of bombing the train, Michael is accused of killing John Hughes, and Aunt Polly is accused of killing the detective. Thomas told them that even though he's the gang leader, nothing could touch him because they were all carrying out the heist but not him. Everyone got mad at Thomas and told him, "We did all this because you asked us to." But Thomas told them to calm down and explained that he'd made a deal with people stronger than his own men, John Hughes' helpers and partners, so he could get them out and help them escape from prison. The most important thing was that when the cops came to arrest them, no one should resist. He'd handle everything from there. Then Thomas told the lazy ones to gather the money that had been spread out again, and he told them not to worry. The money would be safe with him, and they'd get it back when they got out. But everyone was scared and going crazy because even the smallest charge among them carried the death penalty. So everyone rushed out of the office trying to escape, but as soon as they stepped out, they were hit with a surprise. The police were everywhere in the building and easily arrested them all. This all happened right in front of Thomas, who was scared because he knew he was on his own now and was supposed to get them all out. Season 4 kicks off right after the events of Season 3, and we see the Shelby family in prison, all sentenced to death. Arthur, John, Michael, even Aunt Polly. A prison guard comes to each of them, accompanied by a priest, to ask what they wish for before they die, and they go through all the formal steps before the execution, with everyone obviously. They were totally terrified, and no one believed they were really going to be executed. At the same time, we see the British Prime Minister with his assistant, and the assistant starts talking. He tells him there's a whole family about to be executed, and many people are petitioning to stop the executions. The Prime Minister didn't have enough info about the situation, so he asked his assistant why they were being executed. The assistant then began explaining about the Shelby family, saying they were basically a gang, always breaking the law and living in Birmingham. He also mentioned their leader, who was from the same family, named Thomas Shelby, and added that Thomas is filing appeals to stop the execution, claiming his whole family is innocent. But it doesn't stop there. Minister Churchill himself is involved in the case. As for Thomas, he's pushing these appeals hard because, when he was a kid, a palace belonging to one of the ministers was robbed. The The Shelby family were the ones who stole from it, and they found some super important documents there. Among these documents are papers that actually accuse the king and prove that the king is plotting against the state that supports him. If these got out, it would cause chaos, wars, and might even topple the king himself. Thomas Shelby and his family promise that if the execution is stopped, they'll burn all those papers and documents. He was right in front of them, and the Prime Minister got really angry. He immediately started making calls to stop the execution. Meanwhile, Arthur, John, Michael, and Uncle Polly were already about to be executed. Everyone had lost hope and was starting to give in to their fate. But just in time, an officer arrived with orders from the Prime Minister to halt the execution. Everyone was shocked by what happened and overwhelmed with joy because death had been just steps away from them, and now the whole nightmare was over. Then we cut back to the Prime Minister, who was still talking to his assistant. The assistant told him that Thomas's requests weren't just about stopping the execution, but also. Why a second request? Because Thomas wants to become an officer in the British Empire, and back then, being an officer in the British Empire was considered a higher and more powerful rank than a regular police officer. The Prime Minister got pissed off and didn't want to approve the request, since something like that would give the gang leader way too much power. But he had no choice but to agree so he could get to the documents Thomas had. A whole year passes, and we see Thomas sitting alone somewhere. His assistant comes over and starts talking to him, discussing work stuff and his schedule. Then she brings up family and says she wishes they could be together again like they used to. They were all together, and everything went back to how it used to be, but Thomas didn't bother replying to her, so Lizzie kept talking. From this, we understand that the Shelby family completely cut Thomas off after the execution incident. No one talks to him or stays in touch. That's because the family saw Thomas as the direct reason they almost got executed. No one realized that Thomas actually did almost everything and planned everything to get them out safely. That's why Thomas distanced himself from them too. He felt he'd done all he could, and in the end, he did get them out without anyone getting hurt. The whole family really cared about Thomas. Except for just two. But they're still working together normally and naturally. His sister Ada and his cousin Michael Polly. This actually makes Thomas feel comfortable because these two are really important for his work since they're in charge of Thomas's legal stuff. Then Lizzie continues talking and tells Thomas that tomorrow is a really important day because it's New Year's Day. By the way, Seba and John gathered the whole family to celebrate together, but Thomas flat out refuses and tells her he'll spend the day with his son and they'll celebrate together. After that, he leaves her and goes to his coal factory, where he meets Michael, and without any small talk, Michael says to him, "The union rep for the workers in the Communist Party wanted to meet Thomas. We know he wants to meet Thomas because he has an issue with him. Thomas is making wage differences between men and women. He also told him that this person is a woman named J.C. Eden." But in the middle of the conversation, they asked Thomas about Aunt Polly, and Michael didn't have a comforting answer. That's because ever since the execution incident, Aunt Polly has been sad and scared all the time. She says she's been seeing ghosts, so she started taking sedatives and became addicted to alcohol, which is unlike her before. Thomas gets really upset and worried about her. Next, we actually see Polly alone at home, talking to himself, and Michael's words turn out to be true. At the same time, John is at his farm hunting birds when his sister, Eddie Shelby, shows up to spend New Year's Eve with him. Meanwhile, Arthur is playing on his farm with his son, Billy, when his wife, Linda, comes in and tells him that his sister is coming to visit for the celebration. At the same time, Thomas is working in his office when Jessie Eden walks in, and as soon as Thomas sees her, he doesn't even give her a chance to sit and immediately asks why she says there's a difference. In the factory, Jessie asks Thomas about the wage difference between men and women. She says, "The men here get paid 20 shillings a week, but the women only get 10. Thomas, looking upset, replies, That difference exists because everyone gets paid according to how much work they do and what they deserve. I think the men in my factory work harder than the women." Hearing this, Jesse gets really angry, leaves him, and walks away. Later, Thomas goes back home but doesn't get a chance to rest. When he checks his office for mail, he finds an envelope with a black seal addressed to him. Opening it, he reads a message from Luca Shankrita. Thomas gets really pissed off and feels scared when he sees that letter. We'll find out what that letter's all about in a bit. On the other side, at Arthur's place, he's sitting with his wife Linda and their son Billy. Linda's talking and says, "What's this? That death sentence. Brad's a good guy, he's not doing anything wrong like before." Arthur agrees with her and adds that Brad's planning to open a mechanic shop since he's loved fixing cars since he was a kid. But they don't get to finish their conversation because the phone rings. When Arthur answers, it's his brother John calling, telling him he got a letter from the Black Hand with a note saying it's a gift from Luca Shinkreta. And from what they said together, this Black Hand belongs to the strongest Italian mafia gang based in New York. Not just that, they claim that Luca Shinkreta, and if you've been following the previous summaries, you'll understand he's the son of Vingetti Shinkreta, who killed Thomas and his brothers last season, along with his son Angel. Before John ended the call, he asked Ars to check his mailbox to see if he got a letter too. Ars hung up shocked, jumped up without saying a word and ran to his mailbox, and sure enough, he found a letter. It's like she went to John and Thomas, then she went to Ted and found out she was going to talk to Thomas to see what he was planning, and she actually went and met Thomas, kissed him, and told him everything that happened. Thomas told her that he had actually received the same answer. She started asking him what his plan was, and Thomas said he was still thinking because the Black Hand isn't easy to deal with. They plan to pick us off one by one. As a backup, he contacted the officer to let him know if any of the mafia showed up here. Also, to stay safe, the whole family needs to get together again at Small House and Small House D. Their area, where they used to live in Birmingham and where the Peaky Blinders headquarters is, will still be theirs. They'll be safer there because most of the people in that area are Peaky Blinders. After Thomas finished talking with Ada, he called Arthur right away and found out they'd all meet up at Small Heath. Of course, Arthur was really scared, so he agreed immediately. Later, Thomas was just sitting in his office, thinking, when the maid came in and told him the new cook wanted to know how many people would be coming to the party and whether they'd arrive before or after the king's speech. That's when he started to get worried. Thomas is the cook and he had a lot of questions. When he asked the maid about him, she said he's Italian and that he has an assistant with him. She also said she's suspicious and uncomfortable around the assistant. That made Thomas even more worried, but he tried to reassure the maid by saying he'd see the cook himself. So, Thomas went to the kitchen and met the cook's assistant. He started talking to him to get to know him. The assistant tried to act casual and said he was Italian, named Antonio. But Thomas didn't buy it. Right away he felt the guy wasn't really a cook and that he was messing with him. Thomas just left. Then he went to meet the head cook, but he felt something was off there too. The guy seemed really nervous and not normal at all. He talked to him, and Thomas tried to trick him into talking. He actually succeeded and found out that this guy wasn't his assistant, but the Italians had lied to him and were working with him, planning to kill him. So now Thomas knew everything he needed. He asked the cook to call the assistant, then hid behind the door. Antonio showed up with a gun, but didn't get a chance to do anything because Thomas hit him in the chest with a metal bar. Then Thomas pulled out his own gun, put it to Antonio's head, and asked about the Italian mafia. But Antonio refused to say anything, so Thomas killed him without hesitation. However, Thomas didn't want to kill the cook and let him go so he could warn the Italians about what happened. Then Thomas immediately called Michael and told him he couldn't reach his brother John to tell him about the meeting. He asked Michael to hurry up and get John to go to the Small Heath headquarters. So Michael went to John's house and told him about the meeting and that they had to head to the Small Heath headquarters. But before they could finish talking, some Italians stormed the farm. John tried to stop them and fired back, but they were too many. They shot John and he died. Michael didn't give up though. He got shot too. After that, Michael was taken to the hospital and everyone gathered around him. The doctors are treating her and Aunt Polly arrives. She's devastated and really worried about her son. Thomas shows up too, manages to calm Aunt Polly down and tells her that Michael will be okay. Then he leaves and goes to sit and talk with his brother Aris. Both of them are really upset about their brother John, who died, and they go in to say goodbye. After that, Thomas gathers the whole family and starts talking. He tells them, "We killed Fangridi, Shankrida, and his son Luca, and because of that, the mafia is coming to wipe out the whole family. That's how they operate. If one of theirs dies, they go after the whole family. And it's not going to stop there because the police are too busy dealing with their war against the communists to help us." Thomas tells them he contacted Abrama Gold and agreed to pay him $500 up front for each Italian he kills. As for Abrama Gold, he's a gypsy like them but works as a mercenary or hitman, and he has a huge army of men armed with very powerful weapons. Everyone agrees with Thomas except Aunt Polio and Tommy, but they don't really have to follow Thomas since everyone else is on board with him. After that, they all go and attend John's funeral, and everyone is sad. Thomas then gives a very moving speech at the grave. When the funeral ceremony ends, Aunt leaves. Paul goes to the hospital to check on his son Michael, who's really upset about John, especially since he died right in front of him. But Aunt Polly tries to move past it and tells him she's decided they should leave the gang and the war with the Italians behind and just go live peacefully in Australia, far away from all this trouble. Michael doesn't agree, though. He tells her he's going to help Thomas fight off the Italians and get justice for John first, and after that, he'll go with her anywhere she wants. Meanwhile, Aberama and his men arrive at the place of one of Thomas, guys from the Peaky Blinders, a guy named Charlie. Abram goes to Thomas, who's standing there, and asks him to buy the place. But Thomas tells him that Charlie won't agree to sell it because he inherited it from his family and would never give it up. Thomas says they should focus on work instead. So Abram leaves, and they're both clear on everything work-related, and everything's fine. Later, Aunt Polly comes and tells Thomas she'll help him, but warns him about Abram, saying he's not easy and definitely wants something else from them, not just the money. After that, Thomas meets Abram again for the second time and they start talking. Thomas realizes Aunt Polly was right. Abram really does want something else. So Abram begins to explain. Thomas and his son, Bonnie, are top-notch boxers. Bonnie asks Thomas to use his influence and connections to get him into the Professional Boxing Federation. Not only that, but he also wants Thomas to bet on him. Thomas agrees because he thinks it's a simple thing, but he sets one condition. He has to test Bonnie first. So they take Thomas and head to his coal factory, where they find out that one of the workers used to be a heavyweight boxing champion. Thomas gives the guy some money to fight Bonnie so he can test him out. After that, they all head straight to the ring, and during the match, Bonnie's skills really shine. He manages to knock out the champ within the first few seconds with a knockout punch. Here, Thomas realizes how strong Bonnie is, agrees to Abram's offer, and even decides to adopt him. He also brings him into the Professional Boxing Union. But that's not all. Thomas tells Bonnie that he's officially part of the Peaky Blinders now. Of course, this news makes both Abrams and Bonnie happy because they've joined the famous gang, which means they'll make a lot of money from it. A little later, one of the factory workers comes to Thomas and tells him that a French dealer is at the factory to discuss importing car parts from France. Thomas asks him to bring the dealer in, and the dealer comes in. The French guys, but as soon as they see Thomas and hear the way he talks, they feel like he's not French at all and something's off. They don't even let the guy think much and tell him straight up that he's Italian and living in New York. That's when Thomas realizes this is Luca Shankrida. He's surprised. How did he come all the way here himself? Then Luca starts lining up bullets on the desk, one by one, saying all the names of his family. He tells Thomas he's going to take them all out: Arthur, Michael, Ada, Aunt Polly, and finally Thomas Shelby. He also says John was the first one, and that he planned to get Thomas first but didn't want to do it. He wanted to get all his family before he died, and he could have taken them all out without anyone knowing, but he chose to play it fair. So he asked Thomas not to involve the police in their war and to see who would come out on top. Thomas agreed, left Luca, and walked away. The next day, Thomas gathered the whole family at the hospital by Michael's side. Luca didn't show up to the meeting, which really upset Thomas. Then Thomas started talking and told them that, through an informant, he found out there were 15 mafia members who arrived in Birmingham, and Luca was one of them. Later, he also revealed that Luca had met with them at the factory and told them everything. What happened between them, and everyone knows it, was that he handed out Luca's picture to all his men, and also to Abrama Gold's guys, so that if anyone saw him, they'd kill him. Meanwhile, he sent someone to their factory where things were running normally, but he knew some workers were on strike. So he stopped working and went to check on them, trying to get them to stop what they were doing. But as soon as the workers saw Arthur, they all ran off and escaped the factory. Just before leaving, one of them threw something at Arthur. Boya was there, got really angry, grabbed him, and kept beating him up. Just when it looked like the guy was about to die, he let him go and Arthur walked away. So basically the factory, almost empty except for Arthur, and without any warning, 2 Italians burst in. As soon as they walk in, they see Arthur right in front of them and start shooting, but Arthur runs past them. One of the guys moves behind Arthur and tells the other to wait so if Arthur escapes, he can kill him. But Arthur tricks them, sneaks up behind the guy who was waiting, and before he can do anything, Arthur smacks him in the head with a hammer, knocking him out. Then Arthur grabs his gun, takes out the rest, and immediately brings Thomas to the factory. Thomas meets Arthur and starts yelling at him for missing the meeting, and they find out. Also, there are 15 Italians hunting them down to kill them, so they can't be separated right now. But Arthur tells him to just consider them 13 since he already killed 2 of them. Then Thomas starts telling everything that happened to him, and explains that's why he missed the meeting. Meanwhile, Aunt Polly is at the Italians' hangout when Luca shows up and sits with her. It turns out Luca actually contacted her and asked to meet to make a deal. The deal Luca wants to make is that Polly hands over Thomas, and in return, they won't kill her son Michael. By the way, Luca decided to do this because when the 2 died, one of his men suddenly felt that Thomas was more dangerous than he had thought, so he decided to play his own game with him. The surprise was that Polly actually agreed but changed the deal a bit. She told him she would hand Thomas over, but only if he didn't kill Arthur, Michael, and Finn. She said Thomas was the only one who deserved to die, not the others. If he agreed and let them live, she'd hand Thomas over without any problem. Luca agreed, and they made a deal. The next day, Luca went to the hospital and threatened Michael. Luca did it to show Uncle Polly he was serious. If he didn't follow through, the deal would be off or she'd back out. He goes straight for his son, and after Luca leaves Michael's place, Thomas and his brother Arthur show up with their men. They're shocked to find the guy who was guarding Michael dead at the door, and they get really worried about Michael. But they calm down when they come inside and find him alive. Once Thomas is sure Michael's okay, he asks what happened. Michael decides not to mention the deal between Luca and Polly and tells him that they actually came to kill him when they found out you guys arrived here. But Thomas doesn't get involved in the details and starts wondering why Luca left him alive. Then he immediately calls Abrama Gold and tells him the route the Italians took to escape so Abrama can catch up with them. Quickly, he tries to take them out. Meanwhile, Luca and his guys are just on their way like normal, but then they find the road blocked. A cop shows up, apologizes, and tells them that some gypsies had blocked the road, but they'll fix it soon. Then he leaves them. Luca doesn't even warn his brothers or anything, but out of nowhere, Brahma and his men show up and start shooting at them. They manage to take out 2 of Brahma's guys and almost kill Luca too, but he manages to escape. Later, his Aunt Polly comes and meets Michael at the hospital. As soon as Michael sees her, he knows what happened and asks about the deal she made with. Keeps telling Polly about everything, which really annoys Michael. He makes it clear that he doesn't agree with sacrificing Thomas. The next day, Fi goes to Small Hayes to meet Thomas because they had an appointment. They welcome Thomas and take him to talk privately. We find out that Fi has adopted a boxer and is betting on him. Thomas asks to meet Fi to arrange a match between Fi's boxer and Bonnie, who is Abrama's son and also adopted by Thomas. Later, Abrama and his son Bonnie arrive and meet Fi. They agree on the match date and finalize all the details. After that, Thomas goes to the hospital to meet Michael, and they sort things out together. Work tells Thomas that Aunt Polly asked him to go to their charity organization to personally hand out gifts to the kids there. Michael starts getting nervous and asks Thomas if he's taking anyone with him, but Thomas says he's going alone. Michael puts the pieces together and realizes Aunt Polly set a trap to have him killed today, but he can't say anything to Thomas. So, he lets Thomas go and walks away. On the way, there's a car following Thomas, watching him, and Thomas notices it. That's why when he gets to the charity place, he quickly gets out and disappears before anyone can see him. Later, Luca and his men show up in their car but don't find him. Thomas is in his car, and at the same time, he climbs onto a building nearby where he's hidden a weapon. Without any warning, he grabs the gun and starts shooting at them until one of them dies. They all take cover behind the car and keep firing at him, and Thomas shoots back from the other side until he runs out of ammo. Then he starts running away. That's when Luca realizes that Aunt Polly had actually teamed up with Thomas to trap Luca, not the other way around. Meanwhile, Thomas goes to grab another weapon he'd hidden in the building, and Luca and his men head around to the back of the building. They try to kill him, and one of them actually spots Thomas and starts shooting at him, but Thomas manages to barely escape. Still, the guy keeps chasing him until they reach the rooftop. There, Thomas manages to kill him. Then Thomas runs and escapes by climbing down a ladder on the back of the building. Suddenly, one of Luca's men shows up, so Thomas shoots him. Luca is inside the building and hears the gunfire. He realizes Thomas just took out one of his men. One of Luca's guys tells him they should leave because they won't be able to catch Thomas here. He knows the place too well. It's not their turf. But Luca insists on staying, and they keep searching for Thomas when Thomas goes down to the street and finds the guy who had beaten him still alive and breathing, so he hits him a few times to finish him off. But right then, the police arrive and start shooting at Luca and his men. Thomas also starts shooting at Luca with them, but the police stop Thomas to arrest him. Luca takes advantage of the situation and runs away while Thomas keeps fighting to hold them off until the officer arrives. Finally, they let Thomas go. After that, Thomas gathers his whole family and tells them what happened. Aunt Polly comes and says that Luca talked to her, and she contacted Thomas, telling him everything. They decide to take matters into their own hands. Luca and everyone were upset at first that Thomas did all that by himself without anyone with him, but they didn't stay mad for long because they were happy to hear that Thomas managed to take down 3 of them without even getting hurt. After that, everyone left and only Tisa stayed. She told Thomas she was pregnant with his child, and Thomas was really happy. He told her that as soon as his war with the Italians was over, he'd marry her right away. At the same time, Aunt Polly and her son Michael arrived at Abrams Gold's place, and she told him she'd stay there until everything was settled. Meanwhile, Luca was at Ulfi's place and asked him why he was visiting. Luca told him that he came to make a deal about Thomas, but Ulfi started mocking him, saying, "You Italians, what are you gonna do to help me betray Thomas Shelby?" But Luca didn't care and kept talking, saying he wanted 2 of his men to sneak in with his boxer on match day to take Thomas out. Ulfi actually wanted to say no, but he knew if he refused, it'd lead to a war with the Italians, so he decided to back off and make the most of the situation. Luca said he'd help, but in return, Ulfi had to buy 200 barrels of liquor from him and distribute it in New York over the next month. Luca was about to refuse because he knew that was a huge amount. "It's really big, and it's hard for him to hand it over right now, but he had to agree because he knows that the file is in his interest. If they don't do what he wants, he'll betray them. On the other hand, Thomas is sitting with Ada, his sister, asking her to go invite Jesse to dinner with him. She won't agree unless Ada goes to her personally because Ada shares her communist leanings. When Ada asked why he wants to meet her, Thomas said he's working with the army against the Communist Party and wants to meet Jesse to get the names of the party leaders and hand them over to the army. In return, he'll get a big favor from them. He's stubborn but refuses to admit what his role is or that you'll find out in time. His hand was surprised by Thomas, but he listens to him in the end and goes to Jesse. On the same day, Thomas actually meets Jesse, and it's clear he's trying to win her over and fool her. He tells her he's a strong believer in equality between men and women and also mentions he's had communist leanings for a long time. Then he keeps dropping hints that he's really into her, and by the way, she seems to be into him too. Thomas keeps up his plan, trying to show he's interested in the Communist Party and that he can help them with their revolution against the army. He wants to know who's in charge in the party so they can make a deal. She's really happy with Jesse's words. Then she brings up the act Thomas pulled and tells him she's going to report it to the authorities and make sure they know what happened. They come to an agreement, she leaves, and the next day, the Peaky Blinders guys start setting up the boxing club Thomas opened. Thomas's men are everywhere, checking everyone coming in and out so no one sneaks in with a weapon. After a while, Alfie arrives with his crew and his boxer. On the other side, Brahma shows up with his son Bonnie and their men. Later, Thomas and Alfie meet up, and Alfie tells Thomas he's walking away and won't attend the match because he already knows how it's going to end. The boxer's trainer won and they actually let him go. After that, Thomas heads out to the ring to watch the match. Thomas is pretty sure nothing's gonna happen because he banned anyone from bringing in weapons, plus there's no strangers around. But Esau was the complete opposite. He told Thomas he's suspicious of the boxer's assistant. Still, Thomas felt confident and tried to reassure Esau too. Arthur, however, wasn't convinced and kept watching them closely. By observing their house and the boxer's assistants, he figured out they had nothing to do with boxing and didn't understand anything about it. They were definitely there for some other reason. That's why Arthur kept pressing Thomas about it, but Thomas just ignored him and said, "There's nothing going on, it's totally normal." After a bit, Arthur saw one of the assistants leaving the ring through the crowd, and no one noticed. So he quietly followed him with a gun, trying not to draw attention. Meanwhile, Thomas got worried when he couldn't find Arsaba and decided to follow him to check on him. Arsar wasn't paying attention and was looking for that strange Italian guy. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the Italian attacked him and started choking him until Arthur knocked him out and grabbed Arthur's gun. He was about to kill him when Thomas showed up just in time, shot the guy, and took him down. Then he went to check on Arsar, but unfortunately, Aras had sent Aunt Polly. She heard gunshots and went to check on them. She found Thomas right in front of her, who told her what had happened and that Aras had died. After that, he went outside and found out where his brother Finn was. Then Aunt Polly went and told Linda that Aras had died. At that time, Abrams and Bonnie, his son, were at the ring, really happy because Bonnie managed to beat the boxer from the VV. Meanwhile, Thomas went to his brother Finn, who was with a few guys from the Peaky Blinders. They managed to catch the second Italian guy. Thomas and Finn kept hitting him hard and rough. In the end, Thomas told Finn to finish him off, then left and went to the ring. He stood in the middle of it and kept on fighting. There was a lot of anger, and they told him that his brother sent Matt and was really upset. He was about to lose it and wanted to kill everyone there. But then Charlie showed up and kept calming him down until Thomas finally settled down. After that, Aunt Polly called Michael and told him that Arsenal had died. Everyone gathered, and Michael came too. As soon as they saw Polly, they knew they weren't going to Australia and that she was going to stay with Thomas. She trusted him and his plan to get them out of all this. Polly talked to Thomas and told him she was upset with him because she knew he was going to die, but he never told her. Then Thomas told her they were going to head to New York to take care of their business there. Michael didn't know what to say or how to respond, so he just stayed quiet. He listens quietly to half of what's being said. Then they hold Arthur's funeral, and everyone is really upset. In the middle of the funeral, Shankita's wife shows up holding a white flag. Thomas goes over to her and asks her to wait until after the funeral so they can talk. After that, everyone gathers around and sits with her, and she starts talking. She tells Thomas, "You killed my husband and son, and we killed your 2 brothers, so that's that." Then she says they're going to take his family's properties in Birmingham and London, and it's better for him to hand over the properties without fighting so they can all live peacefully. The strange thing is, Thomas actually agrees and promises to give them everything. Just like they wanted, the next day they all met at their headquarters. Luca and his men showed up and he kept mocking and provoking them. Then he pulled out a paper and a pen from his pocket, threw them on the ground, and told Thomas to get down and sign the paper, saying, "I'll have everything, and you won't have anything." But Thomas calmly sat down on the floor and started talking. He said, "Luca, I got to know 2 of the biggest liquor dealers in New York, made a deal with them, and found out that most of your men are secretly working with them. We agreed to kill you here so they can take over all your operations in New York. Based on that deal between the gangs, I ordered your men. They were with us, so in the end you're the one who lost, Nassi." And indeed, Floka was behind him, feeling heartbroken, not believing that his men had betrayed him. He started getting angry and kept hitting Thomas, but Thomas didn't stay quiet. He fought back and managed to take control. At that moment, Arthur came in, and we find out he's not dead or anything. But Thomas pretended to be dead so that when the news reached Luca, he'd think he won and that Shelley's dad was finished. No one knew except Aunt Polly, and indeed, his plan went exactly as he wanted. Then Arthur pulled out his gun and shot Luca in the head, ending him right there. That's it, man. Everyone gathered at Thomas's mansion because they celebrate, as usual. The Peaky Blinders win, but this time against the Italians. Ars talks to them, letting them know he won't abandon them again and will always be there from now on. Then Thomas goes to finish things after finding out where he is. As soon as he sees him, the VP tells him he had no other choice and had to protect his own life. But Thomas says a traitor has to die, pulls out his gun and shoots the VP. However, Thomas gets hit in the shoulder. Thomas's shot kills the VP, leaves him dead, and Thomas walks away. 3 months later, Thomas meets Jessie and manages to get the names of the leaders of the Communist Party from her. Then he goes. Thomas goes straight to the Prime Minister and knows him. They find out the names of the leaders with him, but he won't give him anything unless Thomas fulfills one condition. That condition is that Thomas wants to become a member of the British Parliament. The Prime Minister has no choice but to agree to Thomas's request because Thomas told him that being in the party, he could gather more influence, control the communists, and move them however they want. They agree on that. Then we move on to the elections, and the whole family comes and votes for Thomas. Thomas wins the election and everyone is happy. Lisa comes with her son, and Thomas is very happy, as is his whole family. Also, Lisa gets married, and the 4th season ends. The 5th season starts, and we see Thomas Shelby in a phone booth talking to Arthur. Arthur tells him the negotiations with the Chinese didn't go as planned because the Chinese don't really know the Shelby family or have heard of the Peaky Blinders before, so their threats didn't scare them. We'll find out who these Chinese guys really are soon. After hearing Arthur's update, Thomas wasn't happy, so he ended the call and contacted Finn, asking him to send Abraham Gold and his men to deal with the Chinese and let them know who the Shelby family is. But before ending the call with Finn, he told him not to go yet. He stayed with them so they wouldn't get hurt, ended the call, and left. Meanwhile, the other side went to Brahma, told him, and asked him to go himself to find out who they really were. After that, we move on to Michael, Polly's cousin, who's settled in America to manage the family's business there. As soon as he wakes up, he gets a call and finds out that the stock market on Wall Street crashed. That means the family lost a huge amount of money because they had a lot invested in the market. As soon as Michael hears the news, he doesn't hesitate and immediately calls Arthur to fill him in. Arthur gets really angry when he finds out, and Boley told her everything, and then we go back to Michael, who's really shaken by the news. He decides to pack up and head straight to Britain to meet the family and see how they'll handle things. He's got a girl named Gina with him, and we know they really love each other, so they travel together to Britain. Meanwhile, Brahma Gold and his men arrive at the Chinese guy's place, but Finn is with them and doesn't listen to his brother Thomas. As soon as they get there, Finn tries to break in, but the Chinese guy fires a shot from inside and hits Finn in the shoulder. Finn thinks he's about to die, but Brahma Gold is ready for this. He planned it and breaks into that Chinese guy's room through the wall. As soon as he sees him, he shoots him right away without any warning. Then they go somewhere, leaving his friend and Abram behind at some house. They treat Abram temporarily and take the bullet out of his shoulder. Right then, Ada barges in, super angry because they broke into her house, and she kicks them out immediately. Later, she talks to Finn and keeps getting mad because Thomas was supposed to be strict with them and told them no one should get involved in risky operations like this. Meanwhile, this news reaches Larser, who meets Thomas. As soon as Larser sees him, he tells him about the stock market crash, but weirdly, Thomas stays very calm and tells Larser he already knew the market was going to crash. So Michael got the message and told him to sell all their shares, so they wouldn't lose anything. But Arthur was shocked and told him there was a broker who told Michael the market might go up and advised him not to sell. Of course, this news crushed Thomas, and he asked Arthur to tell the whole family to meet the next day at Arthur's pub to figure out what to do and how to make up for the loss. He took his wife and kids, left Ara's, and left. The next day, the whole family gathered at the pub, and as soon as they sat down, Aya pulled out a bullet and showed them where she got shot. Then she told them what happened and where she was, saying she had been on a mission with Ibrahima. They killed one of the Chinese guy's trusted men, and Thomas got really pissed off because he had warned Finn many times not to go with them on that mission. At that point, Thomas started feeling like he was losing control of the family, and no one was listening to him anymore. So Thomas told them that the guy they killed had photos and documents of a parliament leader, and he asked Thomas to handle the mission in exchange for $50,000. Of course, Thomas couldn't say no because the money was huge, plus it meant getting one of the parliament heads on their side. Later, from their talks, we find out that a lot of roles in the family had changed. For example, Arthur is now the chairman of the board, and Thomas is the CEO. Of course, that's because Thomas is always busy with Parliament, but honestly, those positions are just for show for the guy. Thomas is the one still running everything, and Arthur just does what he wants, nothing more. After the meeting ends, Thomas heads to Parliament, stands up, and delivers a really strong and powerful speech. His speech talks about the workers and the poor, and in it, Thomas asks that none of the rich people or factory and company owners cut the workers' wages because of the stock market crisis. That's because the workers aren't to blame for anything and usually don't have any other source of income. When he finishes his speech, it's really impressive. So all the members of Parliament started clapping for him and cheering him on. When he was leaving, he ran into a guy who introduced himself as a member of Parliament named Aswad Mosley. Aswad shook Thomas's hand and said he agreed with everything Thomas said in his speech. But Thomas didn't really care much about the conversation. He just thanked him and walked away. After that, Thomas went to the party leader, the same guy whose Chinese man Thomas had killed, and he was there to get the money from him. But the party leader surprised him and said he couldn't give him the $50,000 they agreed on because he'd pretty much lost everything. His money's tied up in the stock market, but Thomas wasn't buying it. He started threatening the party leader, telling him he'd found tons of photos, papers, and documents at that Chinese guy's place that could seriously damage him. If he didn't pay up in full, Thomas said he'd use those documents to get him kicked out of his position, and even have him thrown in jail. The party leader got really pissed off, but Thomas didn't back down. He just left, telling him he expected the full payment. Later, Thomas went to his office, and as he arrived, he got a call from an officer in the Irish government army. She told Thomas they'd arrested Michael, his cousin, because they found out he was conspiring with others against Thomas. Thomas replied. Thomas immediately said she sent it to him, and he would handle it his way. Before he hung up, Thomas asked her why she was helping them. She replied that she did it on orders from someone high up, and they wanted to use Thomas's big reputation because of his speeches in Parliament. She said his fame could actually help their revolution against the king, so they wanted to ally with him. Later, Michael and Jane arrive in Birmingham, and Michael is really happy to finally be back with his family. But Uncle Polly and Arthur aren't happy and keep bothering him about it. Aunt Polly doesn't care and tells him Thomas wants to know the truth, which makes Arthur angry, and he keeps. He tells them he didn't betray the family, and whoever told Thomas that is just trying to cause trouble between them. Polly believed him and told Arthur that Thomas now knows Michael isn't a traitor. After that, she warmly welcomed Gina and left them alone. Meanwhile, on the other side, Thomas and his sister Ada are at something like a business dinner with Mosley. But the dinner doesn't go smoothly because Ada and Mosley disagree on almost everything. That's because Ada's with the Communist Party, while Mosley and his party support fascism and its ideas. They're not on the same page. So, Ada keeps pulling away from the group. Later, Mosley offers Thomas an alliance, saying that if they team up, the fascist party will gain major power, and so will Thomas. He's gonna get promoted and become a minister in Ireland, but Thomas isn't happy with the offer. He tells Mosley that he's tied to Birmingham and wants to spend his whole life there, so this deal just doesn't work for him. Later, Thomas goes to Arthur's pub to meet Michael, and Arthur and Aunt Polly are there too. Michael says he's never betrayed anyone, even though he had plenty of chances to do it, because he's loyal to the family. They also find out he married Gina on the ship while coming over because he learned she was pregnant with his kid. Aunt Polly is really happy about the news, but Thomas feels differently. He tells him, "Your son, who isn't even born yet, is a witness. According to you, even if I turn out to be lying, he's the one who will pay the price." Meanwhile, Brahma and his son Boney are camping in the forest when Brahma hears a strange noise. He gets up to check where the sound's coming from, but out of nowhere they get shot at. A bullet hits his shoulder, and a group of men shows up carrying a big wooden cross. We find out these guys are a gang called the Playboys, led by a guy named Jimmy. They grab Brahma and tie him up, while Jimmy keeps beating Boney, Brahma's son. Suddenly, someone shoots Jimmy and kills him. At that moment, Brahma's in a terrible state because he's watching his son get killed right in front of him. He couldn't do anything, so he just broke down and kept crying. Jimmy didn't care about any of that. He went over, put a note in Bonnie's pocket, and told him to give it to Thomas al-Sharibi. Jimmy finished talking and left with his men, leaving Brahma helpless. At the same time, Aris and his wife Linda were together, talking. We find out that Linda wants Arthur to cheat on Thomas. Since Arthur is the company's board chairman, she thinks they can use this to their advantage, take everything for themselves, run the company together, and push Thomas out of the picture. But Arthur got really mad at her and told her he wouldn't cheat on Thomas, that Thomas did everything, and he angrily demanded from her right away. "Don't bring up this whole thing again." On the other hand, Thomas is sitting in his mansion with his wife and kids when he hears a car outside and gets worried. He grabs his gun to go check who's out there. But when he gets to the car, he finds his friend Johnny injured and lying on the ground. Then Brahma Gold gets out of the car, also hurt, crying, and keeps telling him that his son was killed right in front of him. No one knew where they were except Johnny, so Brahma did all this to Johnny because he's sure Johnny betrayed them and snitched. Thomas asks who killed Bonnie, and Brahma gives him the note that Jimmy left. When Thomas opens it, Thomas's name is written there by order of the Billy Boys. Johnny keeps saying he's got nothing to do with Bonnie's murder, but Abrams gets more and more pissed off, runs off to grab Thomas's gun and is about to shoot Johnny. Then Lisa shows up just in time with a gun, firing shots into the air, telling them to get away from the house because they scared the kids, and if they don't leave, she'll shoot. Thomas gets really angry at her, takes the gun from her, then goes to grab the weapon from Abrams and tells her to call an ambulance so they can take Abrams for treatment. That's exactly what happens, and Thomas manages to take control of the situation. After that, we see Arthur on his way. They head to the restaurant, and then we find out Arson is going there to meet a guy who works there. Arson knows this guy talks to Linda and meets up with her. After Linda leaves the house, as soon as Arthur sees him, he asks about Linda's whereabouts but doesn't wait for an answer. He grabs him and keeps hitting him until he passes out. Meanwhile, on the other side, we see Prama's condition has improved a bit. He ignores Thomas's advice, goes to his men, and they stand on the road because they know the Billy Boys gang always pass through there. Sure enough, after a while, a car from the Billy Boys gang stops and they get out to check why the road is blocked. But then, without any warning, things happen. Abrama and his men show up, beat them up, and completely mess with them. Then Abrama tells them, "Tell Jimmy I'll keep looking for him and kill him just like he killed my son." After that, he leaves. Meanwhile, Thomas is at Mosley's farm and they're making a deal. It turns out Thomas really managed to trick him because Abrama trusts him and agrees to swear him in. A little later, Jimmy finds out what Abrama and his men did, so he gathers a huge group of guys and heads to Abrama's house to kill him. At the same time, Araz arrives at Abrama's place, wakes Saham up and says, "If we don't leave in 2 minutes, you're gonna get killed." Jimmy and his men show up right away. They quickly get Abram and the others ready to make a run for it. But Jimmy gets to the house with his guys a bit late and no one's there, because Arsar and Abram beat them to it and left before Jimmy arrived. So Jimmy and his men start searching the place. The moment one of them opens the door, a bomb explodes. Arsar set a trap for them, and a lot of Jimmy's men get killed. The next day, Thomas arrives at Charlie's place carrying a white flag. Shortly after, Jimmy also shows up with a white flag. We find out Thomas decided to fake a hanging to keep his relationship with Mosley smooth and avoid causing trouble until his mission is done. At least he decided to make the most of this truce period and asked Jimmy if they could work together. Jimmy agreed, and everyone ended up benefiting. Then Thomas goes and meets his brother Arsar. After a while, a Chinese guy named Brilliant Chang joins them. As soon as Chang sits down, his phone rings and he asks them to answer it. When he picks up, he's surprised to hear that it's Fan's brother on the line, who tells him that a Chinese woman just pulled a gun on him and is threatening to kill him. We find out that Chang did this to convince Thomas that he's tough, to get him to listen and agree to work with them. But Thomas asked him to walk the girl out, leave Fan and just sit and talk together. Everything would go smoothly. So Chang told the girl to leave, and that's exactly what happened. Then, without any warning, Chang pulled out a piece of opium from his pocket and told Thomas he had successfully smuggled 7 tons of opium from China to Birmingham. He wanted Thomas to transport it from Birmingham to London in exchange for a huge sum. When Thomas heard the amount, his eyes lit up immediately, and he agreed right away. They sorted everything out, and then Thomas went to Abram Rama to ask him to pause the chase on Jimmy for a little while until they finished their business. But Abrams flat out refused and insisted he'd kill Jimmy. Thomas used his smarts and made a deal with Abrams. He'd let him marry his Aunt Polly, and in return, Abrams would agree to Thomas's request and postpone killing Jimmy. We know Thomas did this because he knew Abrams and Aunt Polly liked each other. Like always, love wins, and Abrams agreed to Thomas's plan. The next day, Thomas met with the fiancée of Ede in his office to figure out what to do about Mosley. As soon as they met, Thomas handed him papers and documents proving Mosley was involved in illegal work with Jimmy. And that wasn't all. Thomas told him this was just the beginning and that he'd give him a lot more documents later. He gets more and more involved in some shady business, and is still hesitant because he knows Mosley is really popular. Besides, Mosley is the frontrunner for Prime Minister at the start of the year, so going against him is super risky. But Thomas manages to convince him by saying Mosley can't be trusted with such a big position and might ruin everything the state and government have been planning for years. Ben actually believes him, takes the papers and documents and leaves. Unfortunately, as soon as he gets in his car and starts it to drive off, a huge explosion goes off because there was a bomb planted underneath. When he hears the blast, Thomas rushed down quickly and managed to save a lot of the kids, except for one who died. He was devastated, couldn't believe how it happened. Then Thomas went and met with Aya, his sister, to tell her what happened. She broke down when she heard and told Thomas she was pregnant, and Ben didn't even get to find out because she had been waiting for him to come home that day to share the news. Thomas tried to calm her down and promised he wouldn't let Ben's death go unpunished. Then he left her and walked away. After that, Thomas went to the prison to meet a friend who used to be with him in the army. We learned that his friend was a sniper with incredible skills, and indeed. Thomas goes in, and after he's not searched, he lets his friend Bourne in. We find out Thomas learned that Mosley was the one who sent people to kill Ben, so he decided to kill Mosley. That's why he comes to meet Bourne and offers to help him escape if Bourne does him a favor and kills Mosley. When Bourne talks, we notice he's acting kind of crazy, which makes sense because he's been locked up in solitary confinement for many years. Bourne's really happy and agrees to Thomas's plan. 2 days later, the prison explodes and some guys come, grab Bourne and help him escape. So Thomas keeps his promise and gets him out. After that, Thomas meets up with his family. So he told them what happened and what he's planning. He started by saying he made a deal with Chang about the opium trade, and that it would make them $1 million a year. But before Thomas could finish, Michael cut in and said he managed to arrange with some people in New York who would supply them with way bigger amounts of opium, so the money would be even more. The only problem is these guys refuse to deal with Thomas and want to work only through Michael. Based on that, Michael asked Thomas to step back from running the company and just take his share of the opium trade profits every month. But Thomas wasn't happy with that. Michael grabs the file and throws it into the heater to burn it up. They don't even get to finish their conversation because one of Thomas's men comes in and tells him that his friend Barney has arrived, standing outside with a gun, threatening to take everyone out. Thomas gets really pissed off, tells everyone to get out fast, and tries to control Barney because he's mentally unstable. Everyone leaves, clearly upset by what Michael said but staying quiet. As they head out to deal with Barney, Thomas turns to Michael and says he's given him plenty of chances, but Michael's still set on betrayal. He tells him to leave and never show his face again. So when we came, I talked to him and told him, we'll have to go with Plan B. Thomas also went out to Barney and managed to calm him down. After that, he asked him to sit with his guys for a bit and then he'd come over. He actually left and went in with his family to continue the meeting. Later, Thomas told them that Barney, or Bourne, or whatever name you want to call him, is a criminal with a police record and also mentally unstable, but a super skilled sniper. He explained that Barney would help him kill Mosley in front of the crowd because Thomas would be at that conference right next to Mosley. That way, Thomas wouldn't have any trouble with the police, and he told them that in all this, they're going to take out Jimmy and his whole crew. But it's not just that. Thomas also told them that when Mosley dies, he's going to act really affected, give a speech looking all upset, and say that Mosley's cause and ideas live on, and that Thomas will carry them forward. That way, Thomas will seem like a huge supporter of Mosley, and he'll land a really big position in the party, maybe even take Mosley's exact spot and gain his popularity. Everyone's shocked by how smart and ambitious Thomas is. But the surprises don't stop there, because Thomas goes to see the Phi at his place, and we find out that the Phi died when Thomas shot him at the end of last season. Last time, but only one eye got cleared, and one of the 2 eyes flew out. Thomas comes to make a deal with him and start fresh. Thomas also wants to gather a big group of Jewish people to organize protests during Masley's time. Thomas specifically wants Jewish people because Jews and fascists are always against each other, so the protest will be convincing with no suspicions around it. He sees this as an opportunity that can't be missed and immediately agrees. After that, Thomas leaves and goes to Aunt Polly, but she isn't in a good place. She's really upset about what's happening in the family and is afraid the day will come when Thomas will stand against Michael and someone else. They could kill each other, and that's why Aunt Polly decided to quit and leave. She knew she couldn't just sit there if something went down between them right in front of her. So she handed in her resignation and walked out. The next day, Thomas met Barney, one of his men, and gave him a rifle to test his shooting skills. Turns out, Barney was an incredible shot, and everyone was shocked. That same night, during Mosley's speech, Arthur came out and stood with Parshby, and they recognized the signal they'd agreed on. Basically, the signal was that Thomas would look at his watch, and exactly 10 seconds later, Barney would shoot Mosley. After that, Mosley appeared. Thomas stands next to the platform as the speech begins. After a bit, the second part of the plan kicks in. Followers of Phi, the Jewish group, start protesting, smashing things up and storming the place. This is the signal. Thomas checks his watch and Barnes starts counting down from 10 seconds. But then something unexpected happens. Right after Barnes finishes the count, someone sneaks up behind him without him noticing and kills him before he can fire a single shot. At the same time, another guy sneaks up behind Abram and takes him out too. Arslan is next. Someone tries to kill him but fails, and Arslan manages to take that guy down. Meanwhile, on the platform, Thomas is left confused, not understanding what's going on. The plan didn't go as he and his men had planned. Mosley came to him and told them to leave the place because of the protests outside, saying they could get hurt. So Thomas didn't go and instead went to the changing room. There, he met Archer and found out that Barney was dead and that Abram's gold had also died. At that moment, Thomas was about to lose it because Mosley didn't know anything, so there's no way he did it. Thomas wanted to find out who could have done something like this. Because of what happened, Thomas went crazy and got really depressed. He even decided to kill himself, grabbed a gun and shot at himself. But luckily, the gun was empty. Then we find out that Archer is the one. The guy who had a gun left some bullets. Then Lisa comes up and tells Thomas, "You're not the Thomas I know, because the Thomas I know never gives up." Then she just walks away. After that, Thomas goes back home and the Irish girl named Laura, who talked to him last season, calls him and says, "You'll find a car in front of your house with a white flag and your men's bodies inside." Sure enough, Thomas looks and sees the car with the bodies. Then she calls back and tells him the people who messed up his plan are from the Irish army, along with some others. She says it's not important to know exactly who, but the important thing is that he needs to be. "I know the most important thing for us is that Mosley stays alive, and any other attempt will put your men and yourself in danger. Besides, we've been setting up your organization so you can rely on us in the upcoming period. As for the people who died, their blood is on your hands because you didn't know how it would end." After Laura said this, she hung up the call. Then Thomas goes out to check the bodies he got and finds Barney and Abram's gold. But what he didn't expect was the third body, which was Aunt Polly. Just a small note. The actress who played Aunt Polly in real life actually died, so that's why they had to do it like that in the show. Thomas is totally losing it over what happened and is really upset about the deaths of his men and Polly. They go to bury the bodies, and Michael visits his mom's grave, telling her he'll get revenge and kill Thomas because he's the reason she died. Fast forward 4 years, and we're at a small island in France. Thomas arrives there, checks into a hotel room because he's planning to hold a meeting. After booking, he hangs out at the bar for a bit, but the problem is, one of the guys there used to work at a rival cigarette factory that shut down when Thomas's company beat them out. So, as soon as he spots Thomas, he decides to mess with him. He was about to hit him, so Thomas got really annoyed and started hitting him and his friend. He even pulled out a gun and threatened them, but then changed his mind, put the gun away, and left. After that, he went to his room to get ready for the guests. He sat down alone thinking, and remembered what Aunt Polly said about a war breaking out between him and Michael, and that one of them would die. After a while, the people they were waiting for arrived. Michael came with some traders and whiskey. We learn this is their first meeting since Aunt Polly died 4 years ago. Thomas talks to Michael and says if he wants to take revenge on a powerful enemy, he'll need time, and he suggests postponing the revenge for now. So he's talking about the feud between them first. Then Thomas talks to everyone there and tells them the whiskey trade is now legal. He lets them know they'll be working in New York. After that, he tells them that over the past 4 years he's been dealing with opium and even shows them a sample to check out. Then he offers them to take over the opium business in America and gives them a big bag full of opium as a sign of goodwill. He assures them they can move around freely because the guy controlling the island is an old army buddy of his, so no one will bother them. But they tell him they'll head back to Jack in America first. They reply to him, and by the way, this means that this guy is Uncle Gina, Michael's uncle. So now we know that Michael is currently working with Uncle Gina in America, just like Michael has been aiming for a long time. Then Thomas ends the meeting and tells them he found out there's an informant in their organization in America who's been leaking info. They get confused and start thinking about what he said. After that, Thomas leaves and makes a phone call, reporting Michael. He's got a bag with opium and gives the police all his details so they can identify him. He also lets them know Michael is about to travel to America. Then we switch to Gina going to visit Michael in prison. So America, and that's how we know Michael got arrested. Gina meets him and tells him that Thomas is definitely the reason, but Michael doesn't care and asks her to talk to her uncle to get him out. She actually does that, and her uncle is currently working on getting him released. Then Michael tells her that Thomas said there's a mole among them, so he must be the one who snitched on him. Gina asks Michael why he went back to working with Thomas after everything that happened. Michael says it's his chance to get rid of Thomas and settle the score. Gina understands and leaves him. Later, Thomas meets Gina in America, and the moment she sees him, she tells him her uncle refused to work with him, but Thomas is. He cares and lets her know that he's the one who reported Michael, and also tells her that if her Uncle Jack refuses to work with him, he'll have to work with the Jewish Al family, who, of course, are enemies of her uncle in Boston. She gets scared by this threat and tells him she'll go back to her uncle and responds to him. Then Thomas gets a call from Lisa, who tells him their daughter has the flu and they won't be able to travel to Boston because it's too risky for her. Thomas says it's okay and tells her to come once she's feeling better. Later, she tells Lisa that their sick daughter was saying some strange, gypsy-like things she didn't understand, but she still tried to tell Thomas some of what she heard, just as soon as. Listen, Thomas is really worried and is always getting his stuff ready to head back to Birmingham. But before he leaves, he meets Michael and tells him that he was the one who reported him. He also tells him that he'll be heading back to Birmingham, where he'll meet Jack. He gives Michael a letter from the boss saying that Michael will stay in jail for a bit until the media stops talking about the case. Once he's out safe and sound, they'll finish their business together, then go their separate ways. After he's done talking, he grabs his things and heads back to Birmingham. Sure enough, after a short while, he arrives in Birmingham and goes straight home to check on his family, especially Ruby's daughter. Thank God she's doing okay, but they take them and go to the hospital just to be sure, and actually, they feel reassured and go back home. That same night, Thomas is in the bathroom when suddenly he starts having seizures and falls to the ground. She quickly rushes to help him, and when he comes to, he tells her he was imagining fighting someone in an underground place, and that it was the second time he'd had hallucinations like that. She tries to convince him to see a doctor, but he tells her he doesn't have time and needs to finish the deal he's working on first. After that, he says he and his whole family will be free from all this. Then we move to a Labour Party conference in Birmingham, where Thomas goes up to give a speech. He's really fired up and keeps pushing them to take the throne, telling them he has to step down from his position. After the conference, he meets Laura, the Irish Army officer who was on the phone with him. This is actually their first meeting, and she asks Thomas to sit down and talk somewhere public. But Thomas reassures her, saying they're not going to take revenge on her now, so she shouldn't worry. Of course, he says this because she was partly responsible for Aunt Polly's death. Then they sit together and talk, and Laura asks what he did at the post. Thomas tells her that Jack refused to work with him. After that, he gives her some letters between Jack and the President of the United States, and when she opens the letters, you know, Jack came to London to get a license to import coal, but Thomas tells her that's not true. The real reason is that he's here to support the fascist cause. He explains that Jack's dream is for the fascists to win, and their role is to pretend to be on his side and back the cause. She agrees to meet with Jack and try to convince him to also visit Ireland to support the fascist cause there. She hesitates a bit because she doesn't fully trust Thomas, but in the end she agrees. Later, Thomas meets his sister Ada, who took over Aunt Polly's role in the family after her death. Ada is upset with Thomas because she doesn't want him to put himself or the family in danger. In the case of the fascists, because that would put them in great danger, but Thomas makes sure to consider everything and tells her the only way to get rid of the fascists is to become one of them. But Masra insists, saying she won't join his plan because she's scared for herself and her kids, and she leaves him. After that, Thomas goes to meet Fi, and they find out that Charlie Salmon's right-hand man who lives in Boston and deals drugs there was killed by Jack's men. Fi gets really angry and upset about his uncle's death. Then Thomas tells him he has 5 tons of opium in his warehouses, not counting. His warehouse is on a beach in Canada, and he knows that place is super secure. He also tells him that his men are ready to distribute the goods all across America. Of course, this would bring in a ton of money. They know that if they team up and help out, the Salamaz family will regain control of the trade in Boston. This would be the biggest chance for Ulfi to get revenge on Jack. But Ulfi asks if he's going to betray and sell them out, and Thomas says he's doing it because he doesn't want any trouble with the Irish or the Italians. Besides, he already has old friends there who know Thomas well, and they also know that in return for Ulfi, Thomas will get the warehouses. He owns it and plans to tear it down to build houses for people who don't have any. They actually agree on that. Meanwhile, we jump to a party at Mosley's place. Thomas, Lisa, Johnny are there, and there's also this guy who's totally hammered from drinking and is wrecking the party. He's acting like that because he's heartbroken since Linda left him. They take Thomas away from the crowd to calm him down, and he tells Thomas that if he slows down on the drinking, he'll tell him where Lynn is, then lets him go. After that, Thomas meets up with Mosley and fills him in on the latest with Jack. Thomas tells Mosley he wants to meet Jack, so the next day he goes straight there. Thomas is at a church and runs into Jack. As soon as Jack sees him, he says, "We're in a church, man, we can't be lying here." But Thomas tells him, "Don't worry, I'm not religious anyway, so it's all good." They get to know each other and start talking about work. Jack says, "Why do I let you come into my country and sell drugs that kill people?" Thomas replies, "That's not a problem. You work in whiskey and your stuff kills too." Actually, whiskey kills more than opium because opium is basically just herbs in the end. I don't even know where Thomas got all that confidence from, but that's how it went down. Jack doesn't really care. Thomas tells him he wants to meet the fascists in London. Thomas says he's got a good connection with Churchill, and Churchill is against fascism, but if they team up, he can find out Churchill's plans against the fascists. In return, he'll get into Boston and distribute opium. But if he refuses, he'll have to deal with Churchill and the fascist issues alone, while Thomas will still enter Boston and distribute opium, but through the Jews. Jack says he'll think about it, then leaves. On the other side, Thomas's daughter Ruby, who's not doing well at all, starts seeing a gray man with green eyes coming to her. So Baba tries to get Lisa to talk to Thomas and tell him what's going on, but at that moment, Thomas is in a meeting and can't respond. Lisa calls the doctor because Ruby's condition has gotten really serious. She's coughing up blood. Meanwhile, Thomas gets a message from Lisa saying Ruby is very sick, which really worries him. He quickly rushes to his office to grab his stuff and go check on his daughter, but when he gets there, someone, waiting for him and attacks him, trying to kill him. Thomas manages to fight back, hits the guy and ends up killing him. But then we find out Thomas is hallucinating. No one actually came, nothing happened at all. He keeps thinking about the first person he ever killed in his life, and it's a guy with green eyes was killed underground. After that, he snaps out of those illusions and heads straight home to check on his daughter. Once he gets there, he takes his daughter and rushes her to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor tells them that, unfortunately, Ruby has tuberculosis, which is a really serious and highly contagious disease. The problem is, it's in an advanced stage and has affected her lungs. Most likely, the usual treatment won't work, and they'll have to use something called gold salts. Thomas tells his wife to let them try the gold salts while he tries another method. Then he leaves and calls his sister, asking her to cover for him in London for just 5 days because he's going to do something, and she actually goes to Mosley's house and meets Diana, his fiancée. Diana tells her that Jack was here a little while ago, but Mosley probably won't come because he found out Thomas isn't coming and got upset. They keep talking for a bit, and from the conversation, she realizes Mosley is likely planning to kill Thomas. Meanwhile, Thomas goes to see his family and meets Tommy Shelby, the widow of his brother John. May he rest in peace. He tells her that his daughter Ruby is sick and asks her to use magic to heal her. He also tells her that Aunt Polly appeared to him in a dream and told him to come to her, but Tommy refuses to help, so he leaves. He walks, but then he hits another problem shortly after. She knows she has to help him. So after a while, she reaches out to Shelby Company and sends a guy named Isaiah with her to their opium warehouse to deal with the workers stealing opium. They tell them the one encouraging the theft is named Hayden. She gives them Hayden's address and makes it clear she doesn't want him dead, just to get a serious beating to teach him a lesson. Isaiah brings some of his men and goes with her to meet Hayden. When they meet, Hayden says the symbol for theft is the black star, and that black star actually means killing. But he says, "We're not gonna kill you, we'll just teach you a lesson." But Hayden doesn't keep quiet. Ars gets triggered and tells him, "We're just like you. We stole because we're addicted to air conditioners and can't stop." But the weird thing is, Ars isn't even bothered by that. Instead, he feels sorry for Hayden. He lets the guys go without touching them. Meanwhile, Thomas and Asmi arrive at the graveyard, and Asmi starts thinking that Yakout gave a gem to a woman exactly 20 years ago. That woman took the gem, gave it to her sister, who made a necklace out of it and gave it to her little daughter. That girl caught tuberculosis and died that same day. Asmi tells him, "I think the girl's mom put a curse on your daughter and waited until your daughter turned 7 to make it happen." The woman was heartbroken, thinking her daughter had died, and Thomas went completely crazy. He told her he'd search everywhere for this woman. Thomas also made a deal with Asmi, saying he'd give her lots of gold if she helped him find this woman. But unfortunately, none of that mattered because when Thomas got back to the hospital that night, he found out his daughter had actually died. He was crushed and broke down when he heard the news. After Ruby died, we move to the funeral where Thomas stands up and tells everyone that because his daughter died, he's going to do a lot of good deeds in town in her name. After finishing his speech, he goes to Lisa and tells her he won't let whoever did this get away with it. And indeed, after that, Thomas finds out the gypsy woman's house who gave him the necklace a long time ago. He goes there with his men and kills her and her servant. After that, he goes to Tommy Shelby and gives him the gold they agreed on. Tommy takes it and they head to a faraway farm. She tells him not to be upset about his lost love, and says someone else will come along. Then she tells him she doesn't understand. She explains that before he traveled to France, there was a girl named Zelda he slept with before he turned his life around and stopped his bad ways. But now she has a son named Duke. She also says she tried many times to reach him but couldn't, and Zelda died after a while, but the boy is still alive. He was working as a thief, so she told him, "My son's name is here if you wanted to make up for Ruby. Give me some gold and I'll figure out how to send it to you." But Thomas walked away without replying because he was obviously shocked. That same night, he met Lisa and told her he was going to fund research on tuberculosis as a tribute to his daughter. But Lisa didn't care and knew he had killed the woman, so she got really upset and kept arguing with him, saying he'd never change. Thomas got really angry and told her he wasn't going to stop what he was doing or what he did, then left her and walked away. After that, Mosley, Laura, Dakin, and Jack gathered at Thomas's place. Thomas filled them in and they started talking about work. Thomas tells them that Jack supports the fascists and is here in England to back their cause and help out. They talk about Mosley and Laura and say Jack should inform the American president that they're going to wipe out everyone who opposes fascism. Then Mosley says Thomas is a member of Parliament and very popular, and that soon he'll quit Parliament and announce he's joining the fascists. This will make a lot of people follow his lead. Mosley says this because he thinks Thomas is solid and on their side. So once Jack is sure about Thomas, he immediately agrees to supply Laura and Mosley with weapons from Boston to support their guys in England, and he also agrees to help Thomas. He goes into the opium Boston, then Thomas heads to London and talks to one of his men, telling him that Mosley and Gina are secretly involved. And he's not lying. He gets the scoop and goes to the house they were just at, but Mosley has already left. So he meets Gina and Gina's shocked, but Thomas doesn't give her a chance and immediately confronts her about cheating on Michael, threatening to tell him. Gina starts begging him, so Thomas says, "I'll make you a little deal. You'll go with Mosley to Berlin and attend a meeting with some German government officials. You'll find out exactly what they're planning to do. In return, he won't say a word." Michael decides everyone should come out a winner and actually agrees, so he lets Thomas go. Later, Thomas gets a letter from the hospital where his daughter Ruby was, and the doctor there asks to meet him alone to discuss something important and serious. The doctor arrives, meets Thomas, and explains that they tested him as a precaution because his daughter has tuberculosis, so it's possible he caught it from her. They also tested his wife just to be safe. The problem is, rumors are spreading that Thomas has a brain tumor, and if that tumor grows, it could lead to tuberculosis. They find out that this tumor might have caused panic attacks or hallucinations recently. Thomas actually connects the dots and figures out what triggered his hallucinations during that time. The doctor continues explaining and tells them the tumor isn't contagious right now, but surgery isn't an option at this stage. They ask Thomas how much time he thinks he has left to live, but before he can answer, the nurse walks in. Thomas doesn't want her involved and deals with the doctor like he's just a clerk. After that, the doctor gives him a contact number and leaves. Thomas is obviously shocked and really upset, but he decides not to let it get to him. So he could finish his first mission. Then Thomas goes to a Chinese guy's restaurant to get opium from him. But of course, he wasn't going empty-handed. He had a bomb with him. When the Chinese guy saw it, he freaked out and immediately went inside to bring out a huge roll of opium. But Thomas didn't care and told him, "From now on, you're gonna stop selling opium and just sell food and drinks since you have a restaurant." Then Thomas throws the bomb into the water right in front of the Chinese guy before walking away, just to make sure the guy knows he's serious. And sure enough, the bomb explodes, scaring the Chinese guy, who then realizes Thomas isn't joking. Thomas got together with his whole family, and the reason for the meeting was that he wanted to introduce them to some new family members. The first one is Mary, who's the sister of his brother's new wife. The second is the son of Duke, whom he met through Thomas Shelby. Duke was a bit of a handful, but Thomas finally got to know his dad, joined him, and they got along great. Everyone was shocked to learn that Thomas has a son, but he told them everything about him and how he found out he had a son. Later, Thomas asks Arthur to teach him how to read and write so he can fit in with the family business. Arthur takes him under his wing and starts teaching him, and it's clear they quickly became good friends. After that, he meets. Thomas asks Linda if she's going to tell Arson what happened between them or not. Linda says, "No, of course not." Thomas then offers her £10,000 to go back to Arson. Linda still says no and tells him she might be able to help Arson but won't be able to get back with her husband. Thomas leaves after telling her they'll meet again. Later, Thomas goes to Liverpool and meets the guy who had been stealing morphine from them. He gives him some money and they find out that when Arson talked to him, he started getting back to normal. So, the money is basically for helping his brother. After that, Thomas offers to work together and they learn that some weapons are coming for their friends from. Boston wants him and his men to take the guns and store them. They promise that if he agrees to work with them, he'll get really rich because Thomas plans for any opium shipment coming from Boston to reach Liverpool first, which will bring him a lot of shipments. The guy agrees and they make a deal. Meanwhile, on the other side, Finn meets his brother Arsener and tells him that the referee for the next match is religious and doesn't want any bribes. And if you don't remember, this ties into their main, old hustle. They fix match results to win bets. When Arsener hears this, he asks Finn to get him that referee so he can meet him himself, and he does. The referee shows up and when Arthur tries to bribe him, the referee says he's going to call the police. Arthur asks, "Where?" "Don't bother, I'll call them right now." He actually calls them and the police detective Moss, who usually gets the results from them, answers. Arthur hands the earpiece to the referee and tells him, "Go ahead, talk to the police." The referee reluctantly hangs up and gives the phone back to Arthur. Arthur says, "You're gonna call a penalty for Birmingham City in the last minute." The referee replies, "If there's a penalty, I'll call it. If not, I won't call anything." It's clear the referee made up his mind, and Arthur gets really angry and starts shouting orders. Billy, who works for them, is told to kill the judge, and he actually does. Billy kills him by choking him with a wire. Billy goes into shock because it's the first time in his life he's killed someone. Later, Jack meets with Billy, and we find out that Billy is actually spying for Jack within the Shelby family. Even though it's the first time they're meeting in person, Jack tells Billy the new orders. Stay away from Thomas, and others will take care of him. Jack's role is to send messages, and he threatens to kill Billy if he doesn't listen. To make sure Billy knows he's serious, Jack quickly tortures him a bit, so Billy doesn't think he's joking and then lets him go. At the same time, Linda Arthur meets up with someone and is really happy that he saw her, and they pray together and spend 2 whole hours talking all day. Meanwhile, one of Thomas's men comes over and meets him, bringing along the Duke's son. He tells him, "Man, that Duke stole money from our shops, not to mention the car I saw him stealing." So Thomas walks over, sits down with the Duke, gives him some money and says, "Take whatever you want, but don't steal from me." The Duke replies that he doesn't want money, he wants cars and horses. Thomas tells him he'll get him everything he wishes for. We know that Thomas hasn't told anyone except his family that the Duke is his son, but to the rest of the gang, he's just a kid. He works fixing cars at Shelby Company. Later, Thomas meets Diana, Mosley's fiancée, and asks her to connect him with a contractor named Jens, who used to be her husband, because Thomas wants to build houses for people who don't have anywhere to live. He also tells her he plans to dig trenches under the houses, and she agrees. After a while, when Thomas goes home, he starts breaking things again but tries to hold himself together so no one finds out how bad he's doing. Later, Thomas meets with Lisa and Jack, and they agree that Thomas has traveled to Canada, of course, to pick up a shipment of opium. That shipment is also the one that will reach Thomas. $5 million, and he won't be alone because Michael and his guys will be there to protect him. Soon, Mosley and Diane arrive at the meeting, and it's clear that Jack's relationship with Mosley has improved. They keep thanking each other. Meanwhile, Diana keeps teasing Lisa, trying to hint gently that she likes Thomas, which makes Lisa storm out, frustrated. Mosley hears everything but doesn't care, and he advises Thomas to find someone better than Lisa since she won't fit with his new status. But Thomas just keeps mocking all of them, saying Lisa is way better than anyone else at the table. Meanwhile, on the other side, America sends one of his men to Jack to let him know that Jack will get Michael out of prison, and in return he has to kill Thomas. Michael tells him, "Don't worry, I was going to kill him anyway." Some time passes, and Michael actually gets out of prison just like Jack promised. Of course, Michael's main goal is to kill Thomas. Meanwhile, Thomas goes to talk to Lisa because she found out he cheated on her and is really upset about it. They talk for a while, and Thomas asks her to wait for him to come back from Canada before deciding what to do, but she refuses and tells him she's going to leave him. After that, Thomas goes to say goodbye to his son, Charles. Before he travels, we switch to Thomas in his office. Arthur shows up and tells him he saw the rumors about him and knows he's not doing well. He asks Thomas to take it easy for a bit and focus on finding a treatment for his condition. But Thomas doesn't care and says his condition is pretty stable right now, and he can still get his work done during this time. He also asks Arthur if he knows anyone with the same illness, but Arthur disagrees. They end up arguing so much that Thomas hits him. Then he takes the elevator, leaves him, and walks away. After that, he stands in front of a picture of their brother John, who died, and starts crying while drinking. Thomas comes over and tries to calm him down, saying, he tells him not to worry, that he'll be fine from now on. Then Thomas goes to a work meeting with his men and gang, asking them to gather the money and any important papers. Isaiah is sick, so Thomas puts him in charge of the mission. Isaiah is one of the Peaky Blinders gang, but a bit new. Later, Thomas tells them there'll be a party, like a farewell party, and says it's on the day of the ad. He leaves without giving more details. On the other side, Thomas meets Diane to ask her to buy land from some of her relatives, and she agrees. Before they finish talking, Mosley comes in and hands Thomas an invitation for him and Diane. It's pretty clear she's really upset about this. Meanwhile, Michael and his guys arrive at the pub where Thomas is supposed to meet him so he can take him out. Michael has a bomb with him and plants it inside the pub. Then he steps outside and places another bomb inside a car. At that time, Thomas is on a plane heading to London. On the other side at the same time, Isaiah and the rest of the Peaky Blinders crew show up to dig into Thomas's house to find the money and important documents hidden there. But then Duke comes by and gives Finn 2,000 guns to kill Billy. When Finn refuses because Billy is his friend, Duke tells him these are Arsener's orders, or else. It's gonna be the Peaky Blinders because they found out that Billy betrayed them, but Finn doesn't want to kill Billy. He points the gun at Isaiah and Duke, but luckily Duke's already taken 2 shots and quickly attacks Finn, hits him, takes his gun, spins the barrel and kills him with a shot to the head. Then he turns to Finn and says the famous line, "By order of the Peaky Blinders, you're no longer family, Shelby." After that, we flash back to Laura arriving at Arthur's place with her men to kill him, but Arthur's no pushover. He sets a trap, holds them off with his gun and drags them outside the yard, but his luck runs out. There's another group of guys following Laura waiting outside, and they keep shooting at Arthur and Charlie. Shots are flying back and forth, left and right, until Arthur shows up, throws a smoke bomb at them, puts on a mask so he doesn't get affected by the smoke, and starts picking them off one by one. Only Laura's left, by the way, and to keep her cornered, he puts the mask on her so she can breathe. But after less than a minute, he takes the mask off her face and kills her. Meanwhile, Thomas arrives to meet Michael, and they tell Michael they won't give him any of the $5 million unless he shows them where the drugs are stored. Michael agrees. They head out to leave, so Thomas gets into the car, but just before Michael gets in he says, I think I forgot something inside," and goes back in to check. Of course, there's nothing inside. He just waits for the bomb in Thomas's car to go off. Time passes and the bomb does explode, but Thomas walks away totally fine because the bomb actually blew up in one of Michael's guys' car and they all died. That's how the job went down. One of Thomas's men had moved the bomb. Michael comes out of the bar to check and leave with his guys, but he finds Thomas waiting with a gun. Without any warning, Thomas shoots him and finishes him off. Then Thomas goes back into the bar, his ally shows up, and they stick around. They talk together and realize both of them are planning something, and without any warning, Thomas goes home and thinks everything over. Then he goes to see his whole family and tells them he's leaving and no one will know where he's going. He asks Ada to run for a political position because she deserves it, not him. After that, he talks to his son Charles and tells him to take care of his mother. He says goodbye and leaves. A month passes and we see Thomas living in isolation, alone. There's this kind of wooden mobile house, and Thomas gets inside. He looks at the things he brought with him, including a picture of his family and some similar items. Then Thomas grabs a gun. He puts it on his head to kill himself, but he doesn't actually do it because he hears Ruby's daughter. So he goes out, and they run after her to hug her. Of course, all of this is just in his head, nothing real. Still, he listens to his daughter when she tells him not to kill himself since he's not even sick. After that, we move on to the doctor Thomas told about his illness. The doctor sees there's a fire burning near his house and goes out to check it out. Suddenly, Thomas appears and points a gun at him. We find out Thomas does this because he knows the doctor was mocking him. He doesn't actually have any illness and was doing all this in on it with Mosley. He's trying to prove that the illness is fake, and of course, he knows he's in on it with Mosley because he saw a picture of Mosley and Diana's wedding and the doctor was in it. He's about to kill Thomas, but he doesn't want to outright kill him. He just scares him, shoots a warning shot and leaves him. Then we see someone going to Thomas's wooden cart, takes advantage of him not being there, sets it on fire and leaves before Thomas comes back. Later, Thomas arrives on his horse and finds the cart already burning, so he can't do anything and rides away. So, who did it and why? We'll probably find out if there's a new season. And that's the end of Season 6.